Wait, is the Galaxy show, is that gonna like actually premiere? Are they actually going to do the stream? Oh, I guess because they recorded it yesterday. Very funny story. Um, Actually, go ahead. If there's a link to that, we can go ahead and react to that too. I wanted to talk about the interview. We can kind of speed through that and we can like react to the thing. I don't care. We can just derail um, the whole stream for it if it's more interesting. It's actually very funny because the launch party for the game was supposed to happen. It happened yesterday, and I'm gonna disappoint you guys. I'm gonna disappoint you guys like really hard. Like I'm also disappointed. I was invited to go, but I couldn't make it. I know, I know. Go ahead and like someone in like true like French style, someone get the guillotine and just yep, very unfortunate. But that being said, it's all good. I'm still going to be making plenty of content on the game, as evident by like literally what's happening right now. Oh, okay. The Galaxy Showcase 2025 world premiere. Oh, okay. So this is like a what is this? I don't even know what this is actually. Is this like a game show? Like a bunch of game announcements? I didn't even know this was a thing. I don't think anything good is happening there, is it? Is something good supposed to drop? I mean, they have like 3,700 people watching. Anyway, there was an interview I went to like just like read over that I thought would make like really good pre-hype pre-hype discussion. Let me go ahead and pull that up really quickly and then we can discuss because I think it is pretty interesting. Give me 1 second, chat. Oh, there it is. Let's see. Give me 1 sec. Hold on. They have like they're quickly. Oops, you might hear me in the background. Okay, there we go. Sweet. Um, it's 50 games. One of them is confirmed to be Clair Obscur though. I heard they're premiering Clair Obscur Expedition 34. Okay. I'll tell you what, actually. When they actually do show Clair Obscur, we'll just like go over to that. How does that sound? Oh, reminder, folks, because Tabata is involved in this interview, Barry Baztek is doing rounds again on their army of alts to ban evade. So if you see any particular rage takes, oh my god, are you serious? Are you serious? Barry is back? That's crazy. Okay. Well, in the wake of Barry being back, I want to be clear. I'll translate this to English. A couple of things to note is that one, we're just doing the Google Translate, but as I've read through it, there's a couple of parts where it's going to make sense for me to either look at it in Japanese or like pull off something and like actually retranslate it using like ChatGPT, which is going to be way smarter at translating Japanese to English than like Google's stuff. So some stuff for clarity, we will have to do that, just as a note. The other thing is, yeah, apparently Barry, it might be in chat. For those who don't know context on Barry, just a guy who kind of went around harassing anyone who didn't love FF15. This is not going to be like an FF15 bashing session or anything like that. I don't really expect us to like get into like, you know, oh, you like FF15, oh, you don't like FF15, or any type of nonsense like that. I don't really anticipate that. Also, I'm not like anti Tabata per se either. I know a lot of people dislike him for various reasons we could get into, but I'm not anti the guy. In fact, in a lot of ways, I think Tabata is actually kind of genius, because Tabata is like one of the only people that has figured out like part of Square Enix's big problem, and that is marketing and growing these games in terms of sales. So his leadership was kind of the only thing that really led to that. He did some things that I think, how should I say? He did some things that I think really helped promote the game in a really profound way that made like a huge delta in terms of like actually getting the game out there more. That being things like Brotherhood and Kingsglaive, and unfortunately the DLC. Now, we all hate the way the game rolled out. I don't know too many people, even the biggest FF15 fans, maybe Barry or someone like that, but I don't know too many people who really loved the way that game rolled out. Who really was like, yeah, man, I loved the fact that you needed all the DLC in order to like really understand what the hell is happening in the story, or like with the characters, and that you had to watch the anime and stuff like that. I do understand that there are people who appreciate those things individually, and I'm like definitely not here to challenge that like whatsoever. But that being said, yeah, we all kind of acknowledge at the same time that yeah, it's just really unfortunate that the way things came out. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at this interview, and if anything interesting happens on the Galaxy stream, someone just let me know, and we will go over to it. I don't anticipate. Do you have a mod or anything to stop Barry and ban him from the chat? I don't think it'll be necessary from chat. Barry's like a Twitter person, so. But again, we're not going to be saying anything too negative, I think, about FF15 today. I mean, we might touch on some of the criticism of FF15, but like, I don't think I'm setting out with the objective of like, we're gonna rip FF15 a new one or anything like that. But again, we might have to touch on some of the criticisms given like the nature of the conversation. But I'm not like here to like rip the game apart or anything. I'm just gonna be talking about it in terms of like what's discussed in the interview. FF15 had all the right ambitions, but I don't know if they figured out how to execute it in time. Even if they had more time, which would have been unreasonable, it may have been what they wanted. Yeah, I think that even if FF15 had more time, I don't think it would have necessarily turned out to be like the masterpiece that people were like kind of had in their head. And I think part of that was just because some of the decisions, no matter how well they, or how should I say this? Some of those decisions weren't going to age well, like no matter what, because people just weren't going to like them. So, like the press hold to attack and the press hold to dodge and things like that, there's just like people that are just not going to like that. They may have had more time to like fix the story, like put cutscenes and stuff that like explain things in a much better light, I'm sure. But The combat would have never aged well for many. Right. The combat would have been kind of like DOA for like a lot of people from the start, just because of how it is. Right. So I think that I would have been okay with like the press hold combos and stuff like that if there were some more active elements in terms of like the RPG mechanics in combat. So like if you press hold for combos, but then like the whole point of the game is not necessarily to be action, it's to be an RPG. So I'm like press holding for like attack combos, but then I'm also doing like spells and stuff like that, and I'm micromanaging the party and things like that. Then I kind of would have been okay with it, but the problem ends up being is that the combat really is, for the most part, unless you're doing the most challenging fights, the combat for the most part is press and hold the button. Like that is what it is, and then it is the dodge button. When everyone else in 15 feels better to play than the main protagonist, that's when you know there's a problem. Okay, so there was kind of like a rumor on that too, that they wanted to go back and tweak Noctis's gameplay, and what they were going to do was use episode Noctis as an excuse to, or really a way of funding them going back and redoing Noctis's gameplay and aligning it more with like kind of what people wanted from it. And that was going to be part of the final patch. At least that's what is claimed by certain individuals, and I believe it. Holding square to parry made no sense. Yeah, parrying in that game is like kind of automated. It's anyway, like I said, we're I didn't want to deconstruct FF15 too much, but let's just kind of get into the interview because we learned a lot about Clair Obscur here too. So I'll just read, and I'll read some of the comments in the chat too. This year again, she will cause people to disappear. A girl called the Paintress wakes up once a year and draws a number on the monolith. It is a cursed number, and the people of that age written on it turn to smoke and disappear from this world. In order to put an end to the merciless and absurd cycle of death, the mission of Expedition 33 begins. Above is a synopsis. The setting and story are reminiscent of JRPGs. This is all stuff we know. We know who Tabata is. For those that don't, he worked on Final Fantasy 15 and Final Fantasy Type 0, as well as Crisis Core Final Fantasy 7. Anyway, scrolling down, Expedition 33, created by a Frenchman who learned Japanese from FF8. Okay. Learn Japanese from FF8. Broke loves Final Fantasy 8 that much, right? And we're supposed to act surprised that he's collaborating with Ben Starr on this project. Okay, we know what happened here, chat. The FF8 fans are working together. We know what's going on here. It's not a secret. Cloud Strike First Class, thank you so much for the Prime sub, dude. Thank you for being with us for 28 months. But yeah, we all know. We all know. That's what this is. Thank you for joining us today. There are many parts of Expedition 33 that show respect for JRPGs, but are JRPGs popular in France to begin with? I had to actually go and like look how to actually pronounce Guillaume's name. Guillaume Broche. That's how you actually say it. Because I'm like, wow, there are so many French terms whenever I'm like looking at this game. French names, French terms, French words. And I'm like, okay, let me go and get educated because I don't like being the guy who mispronounces all the foreign words. I don't want to be that typical American that does that, right? I want to be the guy that's like, oh, I get handed a word from another culture, a name, a place, and I'm just ready. I just know how to pronounce it. I'm probably still not saying it with like the proper accent, but I want to say it at least close. At least close. At least say it like with an English accent, but right. Strive to be cultured, chat. Guillaume says Japanese manga and anime are very popular in France. In particular, a lot of Japanese anime was broadcast on television from the 1990s to the 2000s. I grew up in that era, and as a video game fan, I naturally became interested in JRPGs. However, looking at France as a whole, I don't think JRPGs are particularly noticed there. So is a perfect match for Guillaume's taste. I think so. Actually, my first home video game console was the original PlayStation, and the first game I played was Final Fantasy VIII. I learned how to play video games and the language through FF8. I was bad at games at the time, and I couldn't beat the boss, and I couldn't get ahead at all. After that, I started playing the FF series and grew to love it. Nice Guy Prince, so when you see funny sounding words and names in English, 99% of the times it's because those words are French or stem from it. English is a mongrel language that French made up a good chunk of. Hell, the language of nobility in the court of French for hundreds of years, so English kings would speak in French. Oh, wow, that's crazy. That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Maybe that's why the spelling on some English words is like, what? You know? What I like about the FF series, first of all, is the grandeur of the worldview. The scale of the story is huge. Also, each character is well crafted and has a unique personality. So I end up liking them more and more every time I play. Furthermore, each work in the FF series, here, let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. And I'll just move this like right there. Furthermore, each work in FF series has a completely different worldview, so I think one of the attractions is that you can experience something new every time. It's because of all this I come to really love FF. Of course, the game system itself is interesting, including turn-based battles, and the music is wonderful. Everything is in harmony, and the sense of unity is irresistible. I worship Nobuo Uematsu's music. What did you play besides FF? Suikoden, Atelier, Shadow Hearts, Persona, Legend of Dragoon, Shin Megami Tensei. I played every Japanese game. I've been playing JRPGs since I was a child, so when I bought new games, I naturally only chose JRPG. Absolutely fucking based, Chad. Let's fucking go. Yeah, I fuck with it, man. I see that makes sense. I just watch gameplay, and it seems like it has a lot of JRPG themes, not just Final Fantasy. Yeah, and I think people have been saying this a lot with different stuff. Even like the music direction, right? Like we were listening to some of the tracks that were publicly available on YouTube right now. And I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of Nier influence actually in those tracks to me. Like when I listen to them, they're in French instead of like the chaos language of Nier, but it feels like the musical direction of what we've heard definitely has like a Nier influence to it, right? So they're pulling from a lot of different JRPGs, but at the same time, I don't think the work really is just like a copy of anything in particular. There's a lot of influences, but I feel like when you look at it, it's kind of its own thing too. Yes, I think all of my experiences have been packed into this work. Okay, so this part is also something I like really wanted to talk about, like right here. Because I think we had discourse about this when FF16 was coming out. What didn't we have discourse about, like when FF16 was coming out, to be fair? But we talked about this one a lot, and that was JRPG being used as kind of a negative term. And it's something that some developers would even get offended by because it kind of felt like this classification of like lesser RPG. Now, of course, none of us agree with that being the case, but if you look back into it, during that era, there was a lot of negativity around JRPGs, and it's kind of strange too, because the previous two generations of JRPGs absolutely dominated. They had more influence than like anything else. They were insane, man. So we were coming off of Final Fantasy 7 and 10, and then suddenly there was this pushback against JRPGs, and a lot of it also had to do with the fact that the West was making some really compelling RPGs at the time, right? The Elder Scrolls games, Fallout games, Mass Effect, those games were coming out, and they were huge. They were pushing the boundaries of video games, and it was pretty nuts. There were a lot of high quality Western RPGs at that time. Conversely, it didn't really help that JRPGs during that generation, during the generation of the PS3 and the Xbox 360, Japanese developers were in a lot of trouble during that time. They weren't adjusting fast enough to HD development, and they weren't getting out enough high quality titles at the time in time. And so it was just really unfortunate too, because JRPGs didn't even have a good enough game to like really rebuttal with at the time. It was a very unfortunate time. It wasn't good. I hated it. It's why I don't care how much you guys gaslight me. PlayStation 3 was my least favorite PlayStation era. I think it's objectively the weakest era of PlayStation. And I think it is the weakest era of PlayStation because it's missing something that like is really important to PS to me, which is Japanese games and high quality HD Japanese games. And so without those, yeah, I didn't enjoy that generation nearly as much. But also outside of just my own biases too, people want the link to the article, so I'll put it in the chat. Outside of my own biases too, though, I just think that was kind of a weak generation all around. But we had Dark Souls in the PS3 era. Listen, there's no era of video games where all the video games were bad. Even the worst generation of video games, the worst console, still probably has some bangers on it. But like, yeah, I still think it was probably the weakest generation of PlayStation, if I'm honest. The weird rise in racism during the early 2000s because of the Xbox 360 RPGs. Yeah, there was a huge like anti-Japanese sentiment during that era for sure. Like it was real. The term JRPG in Japanese game dev in general was used as a joke and negative throughout the 6th and 7th generation by most of the media and notable figures in the industry at the time. It even carried on into many of the early days of the 8th generation. Many people may not have noticed it and swear they use the term positively, but that does not matter. These things did occur and they are indisputable fact. Yeah, I mean, exactly, right? But that's also why too, like, and you mentioned this, is that a lot of Japanese developers try to westernize their IPs at the time. And so is it really a surprise necessarily that like, people might be, and I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with this. I want to be 100% clear, but some people may say that Square like westernized certain Final Fantasy games, but I'm just like, the pressure was on them to kind of do it. Like it was a real pressure. Whether that like is actually the case or not, I feel like is debatable because I feel like the only title that you can really argue that it's Western, like in any way or Western influence, is 16. But I've seen people arguing that FF13 was like poisoned by the West or whatever the fuck. And I was like, bro, how? FF13 is the most JRPG. Maybe in Final Fantasy. It is like so... Like, it is so anime, like anime cringe anime. Like, I'm like, how is that like a Western game in any sense? Like, it is definitely hella fucking Japanese. Like, so I don't understand that. I'd say 15 was pretty westernized. Okay, yeah, I probably couldn't push back there too much because 15 did. I do think you could probably make a case that 15 was fairly westernized in some ways. Um, so yeah, fair enough. FF has always had some Western inspiration, though, right? So this is where things get like kind of tenuous with that argument for me, because let's be honest here. Final Fantasy 1 is a D&D Dragon Quest like. That's like what it is. Well, Dragon Quest is Eastern obviously, but it's a D&D game, and they kind of got it like influence from Dragon Quest, and then that's it. That's what FF1 is. So it's a Dungeons and Dragons game. And like if you actually go back and look at the bestiary for Dungeons and Dragons and like Final Fantasy 1, like Final Fantasy 1 pulls like a lot of its like monsters straight from D&D. Um FF is an odd when looking at sales for it throughout history. It was always made to focus more on a global audience rather than being heavy Japanese audience focused. Dragon Quest is Japan first. Always FF has always been Japan flavored, but global minded, especially post seven. Right. So Dragon Quest is definitely Japan first, and Final Fantasy has always been we're targeting the entire world. But yeah, the games are always going to have a Japanese flavor to them. Was 15 really westernized, or was it really one to emphasize the fantasy set in reality thing? Um, well, I think that like I know you don't mean this, but like the way you worded it would almost imply that Western is reality. I know you don't mean that though, but when I read it aloud, it kind of sounded like that. Um, no, I just think that they wanted to do like the. I think they just wanted to do this kind of like road trip, and it was influenced by like a lot of Western films. No, you're good, Kingdom 850. I just wanted to be clear that like that's like I knew that's probably not what you meant. it just it just clicked for you too. Okay, yeah. I knew that like for sure that probably wasn't what you meant. So that's why I wanted to put that disclaimer on it. But I still kind of like wanted to answer your question. Like, yeah, like 15 was influenced by like American road trip movies for sure. Like I think they even said that in interviews. So it's not like it's not like it wasn't like Western influenced in some degree. But then again, you also kind of have to understand, like, I mean, most of these games are like also kind of Western influence, right? Like FF9, FF1 through 6, they all look at like Western stuff. Most of them kind of do, really. Am I going to WeebCon? I kind of want to go because Ben Starr's going to be there. I kind of want to go just to say hi to him. He's such a great guy. I love him. I've had the opportunity to meet him like twice now. Each time really cool. So, yeah, he's the coolest guy ever. Let's continue on with the interview. The backlash and reevaluation of JRPGs, the difference between JRPGs and the focus on the character story and the overseas RPGs where the player creates the story. In the early 2000s, JRPGs were perceived negatively. However, in recent years, they have been reevaluated and are now accepted as a positive and attractive genre. What do you think about this transition? Tabby: that was certainly the case. I would like to know what France was like at that time, and what Guillaume was thinking. Guillaume: even in France, to the early to late 2000s was a time when JRPGs were harshly received. Look at the JRPG that they're using as a fucking example here. For example, Lost Odyssey was harshly received in Europe at the time. And I think at a time when the JRPG genre itself was poorly received due to this influence, the number of new JRPGs released also decreased. I've always loved JRPGs, and I thought Lost Odyssey was a really great game, so I was really stressed by those reviews. Brother, me too. Me fucking too. On God, bro. However, there were fewer new JRPGs, so I may have spent more time playing fighting games like Guilty Gear at the time. However, as times change, my respect for and values towards JRPGs have not wavered at all. At my core, I have always loved JRPGs, and I think that feeling is reflected in Expedition 33. Now, I want you guys to realize something. Hold on. This is utter like nonsense. Bullshit. Bullshit. It's very rare that you'll see me like actively oppose a Metacritic. Because normally, even if I disagree with it, I'm just like, yeah, that's just what the people have said. And, people are people and you can't change people. And however people feel, it's just how they feel and all that nonsense. But if you ever actually read the reviews for Lost Odyssey, like if you ever actually read the reviews, a lot of them are just like, it's turn-based, 7 out of 10. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Like, is that it? It's like, it does nothing to move the genre forward. Okay, was it tasked with doing that? Did they claim in the marketing that it was going to do that? No. They just said that this is a brand new FF-like game from the creator of Final Fantasy. And that's exactly what it was. And, yeah. I wish Sakaguchi would let people remaster this. Brother, don't worry, because once the native executable comes out, because people are like seemingly working on converting Xbox 360 games to native PC ports, we may get a remaster of the game after all. Reviews don't necessarily mean a good game. Rebirth got a 9. I don't like that game. Listen, I don't think that I don't think that that a game's Metacritic score necessarily determines how good that game is or how bad that game is. I do think it's like kind of an indicator of the reception at the time. So I think that even in this game's Metascore that I'm calling bullshit on, still has like a hint of truth in it. Even though agreeably everyone who plays Lost Odyssey nowadays would tell you that the score of 78 is like completely off and not like a very deserving score of the game. The thing is that it still depicts what the culture was like in 2007 when the game released, right? You could re-release this game today, the exact same game, absolutely nothing touched, not even a remaster, right? Like literally just a port of the game running on modern hardware, and this game would probably score between like an 85 and a 90. But again, the culture at the time was just like, oh, it's a JRPG. Boo. Oh, it's turn-based. Boo. Like, so that was a lot of the problem with it. It was just, it was a good game at the wrong time. And that's another thing too, right? Sometimes, a good game does come out, but it comes out at the wrong time. Sometimes a bad game comes out and it comes out at the right time, and it's and it gets more popular than like it might deserve, right? So you have the two factors there. You have, is it a good game or a bad game? And then you also have, is it the right time or not the right time? Right? And so right game, right time is massive success. Right game, wrong time means that, years later, the kids will appreciate it. The people in the senior homes will have a change of heart. But yeah, it just turn-based games get high scores. Look at Persona 5. Persona 5 was an anomaly, man. I don't think that like you could say that like turn-based games get high scores predicated on Persona 5. Now, it's not just this, it's not to say that turn-based games nowadays don't get high scores, but and this is also like a take that like Twitter would hate and ratio me for, but Persona 5 actually did a lot to begin to reverse the kind of negative perceptions around turn-based games. Giant Monkey Butt, thank you so much for the super chat. Guardians of the Galaxy, awesome game, wrong time. Yes, that is actually a great fucking example, Giant Monkey Butt. Was Guardians of the Galaxy, everyone who played that game loved it. But it came right after Avengers. Now imagine what would have happened if that was flipped around and Guardians of the Galaxy came out first and then Avengers came out second. If anything, more people would have bought Avengers, trusting them because Guardians of the Galaxy was so good. But what fucked Guardians of the Galaxy over was people were like, no, Square Enix's Avengers was so bad, I'm not going to fucking buy Guardians of the Galaxy. And it literally poisoned the well for that game. Like, so many people was just like, shit the bed. Right game, wrong time, or even wrong console. Best example is Mario Kart 8. Sold well on Wii U, only about 9 million. Only like 16 million Wii U's. But then compare it to the Switch version, nearly 70 million copies sold. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. P5 was lightning in a bottle that kind of felt like the 2010 to FF7 moment. It kind of was. It kind of was. And I know that like a lot of people have like a hate boner for Persona 5. And granted, I'm going to be honest, it's really for no damn reason. I see why people get mad at it, because they'll be like, one like really rogue Persona 5 super fan will be like, this game basically invented and saved JRPGs and like the entire gaming industry. And they'll make some hyperbolic statement. Sure, we get it. But no one ever looks at why, so many people feel that strongly about it in the first place and like what it actually did for JRPGs at the time. Yeah, P5, I'm burnt out on P5 now, but I won't deny it. It was a good fucking game, yeah. I don't hate P5, but I do have issues with P5 games. No, yeah, with P5 fans, yeah. No worries there. I can understand that. But a lot of people take out that issue on P5, the work itself, and not on, like, sweaty-ass internet fans. And a lot of people just get mad at the game and don't give the game its due praise just because they're mad at, the kind of sweaty internet fan that would kind of do it. That is kind of just like FF7, where some people feel super strongly about it, and the fans of other FFs get annoyed that 7 is given so much spotlight. Brother, it's exactly like FF7, right? Like, I understand that people may get mad at FF7 fans, but that doesn't take away from FF7 and what FF7 accomplished. But because people are so spitefully mad at FF7 fans, they begin to conflate that with FF7. And then they're like, oh, FF7 actually sucks. It's the worst one. Which is why I hate every, like, I hate those, like, what's your FF hot take? And it's just literally always a guy being like, I fucking hate FF7. Okay. Okay, man. I bet you just been like looking for the opportunity to say that. So, yeah, don't conflate, like the worst people online with the actual work itself. Because if you do, you will probably not enjoy any work ever. Because the worst people of any fandom is always going to like basically fucking ruin your experience with everything. So, um, how do you analyze the difference between RPGs made in Japan and those made overseas? Tabata. For example, in Japanese RPGs, enemies need a reason to fight. I think that's a very Japanese element to it. In Japanese content culture, that kind of thing is important. Also, in Japanese RPGs, it's common for characters who were originally enemies to join forces when they face a new strong enemy. This is a plot that can also be seen in manga and anime, but I think the characteristic of Japanese RPGs is that they experience Japanese values and save the world together. Japanese entertainment works, even those aimed at children. Japanese entertainment works, even those aimed at children have a proper enemy, but in the end, the final boss has a change of heart. I think this kind of plot development is a very Japanese characteristic. I feel that in the past, RPGs have strongly reflected Japanese values, like these were seen in the West as being a bit childish or Japanese RPGs. On the other hand, in recent years, a lot of Japanese content has been spread around the world, and Japanese values have come to be highly regarded, so I believe the image of the term JRPG has changed significantly. In Europe, I think it's more common for the ending to be a gruesome one, with all the enemies dying. That's right, I feel the difference. In terms of Japanese RPGs, I think the element of growth is also important. The protagonist is weak at first and can't accomplish anything, but grows through adventures with his companions and achieve a big goal at the end. This flow is also very Japanese. There's a common Western joke that goes, in Japanese games, you start off by defeating rats, but you end up defeating God. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. We do say that. We do say that. Here's a hot take. Linearity in FF is not bad. The way the game is structured to force linear corridors is bad. Yeah, no, 100%. And that's why the conversation about FF13 is annoying. FF13 could have been a linear game, and it could have been good too. Like, it didn't have to have the problems that it had just because it was linear. So, Guillaume is so based. Dude, he's based as fucking hell. Dude, he's based as fucking hell. He's so cool, man. And it kills me, chat. I was going to get to meet him. I was going to get to meet him. I'm dying inside. I need to. There will be another opportunity for me to shake hands with this Chad, and I'm going to do it. Have you seen the Moon Channel's video in SP, the one about God in JRPGs? I know we've discussed this before. I've never sat and watched it in full, but I think next time I'm at the gym, I'm going to give it a listen. With 13's linearity being such a problem, you can see how 13.2 fixes almost all those problems with how it uses time travel as a backtracking mechanic. Yeah, 13.2 fixed all those problems, and it's a much better game for it, too. Tabata says, but maybe it's the flow of this that each player has their own story when they finish playing the game. Japanese RPGs are kind of content that gives you that kind of feeling after reading the book. Although the scenario is merely a scenario, as the player progresses through trial and error, a story that ultimately becomes the player's own memory is born. I think that is what makes Japanese RPGs unique. In Western RPGs, the ending changes depending on the choices you make, so I have a strong impression that the player creates the story. I think that Japanese RPGs are linear, for better or worse, because they have such a strong story. I think being able to experience the character's choices as a viewer is a big difference in expression. Tabi, I'd like to hear a bit more about Western RPGs. Kim, Western RPGs tend to maintain a serious tone from start to finish. They often depict a consistent, down to earth, realistic worldview from A to Z. That kind of production style certainly has a sense of reality, but to be honest, I sometimes find it lacking. On the other hand, JRPGs have the thrill of immersing yourself in a spectacular world you've never seen before. On top of that, rather than being involved in the story's choices, you follow the growth of JRPG characters as you watch their stories unfold. And then you see that growth in yourself. I really like that perspective. That's why I'm drawn to JRPGs. With the growth system, characters are no longer something to watch, rather than a scenario to follow. The player feels like they are the one with the character, making for a more immersive system. With the I just read that one. I completely agree. Japanese RPGs are really well crafted and multi-layered when it comes to growth system and game progression. That was also the case with FF8, the first game I played. The junction system is incredibly complicated, and it takes time to understand it at first. But once you understand it, the system is deep, and it's a lot of fun to think how to use in your strategy and how to build your character. I think that's what gives it a different appeal than Western RPGs. Okay, so I do have like a semi-tangent in this. I really do fucking wish that they would like do growth systems again, like the junction system or like the sphere grid. You know, like I wish that they would do a progression system that was unique and not like something that you can find in every JRPG, which is just kind of like a skill tree type thing. And it's not even like the sphere grid, right? Junction system is fine. Drawing system is awful. Yeah. No, I don't disagree there. But like, it's the fact that they used to play around with progression from like game to game. And I just felt like and I hate to like lump them all together like this, but it's a problem with 13, 15, and 16. The last time progression was interesting was Final Fantasy 12, right? Like, is that a disagreeable opinion? Like, would someone push back? I'm not including the 7R games in this because they technically use materia again. You know, it's a remake of 7. Okay, so people do agree that the last time that like FF like had like interesting progression systems was 12. And everything else has just kind of been like okay ever since, like at best serviceable, but like not like oh, this is like really deep and like let me like mess around with like all the different configurations you can do. I've said to you in private before that FF never really excelled at combat besides FF10. Where FF excelled was the preparation and character growth systems that you engage before combat. No, I agree. 100%. Like, FF gameplay, actually more than turn-based combat, was actually the preparation that you did before the fight. And those really unique progression systems was more Final Fantasy to me than like anything else. Like if I had to point to like one thing that I like undeniably Final Fantasy gameplay to me, it was like a cool ass progression system. Like that's like the most important thing to me. I think he is correct on the difference of Western RPGs versus JRPGs. The player creates the story is the big goal in Western RPGs. You embody a character that exists in a world, and your choices affect every aspect of the experience. In JRPGs, you are more like an entity guiding the characters, and you are not meant to embody the character, but have empathy towards them on their journey. Yeah, for sure. And I think there are like kind of some exceptions on both sides, but for the most part, that's kind of like the general overview of the difference between Western and JRPGs. Now, what I do think is interesting, and what we might see from Clair Obscur, is like a little bit of Western influence in a JRPG structure. And I think it'd be cool to see a little bit of JRPG-ness in like a Western game too, right? I don't know. I like I like the influence that the West and the East have on each other when they respect each other's work and maybe incorporate a little bit of stuff into each other's work. And not to say that they have to, but when they do, we get like really interesting stuff, like Clair Obscur Expedition 33, right? If these French guys didn't like, weep the fuck out, we wouldn't be getting this game, right? So it's just really always cool whenever you can take that influence and kind of integrate it back into your own culture and think, what does this mean for my people? Can we use this? What do we value about this? Clearly, something about this has to speak to our own values too, because if it didn't, we wouldn't be so in love with it, right? So it has to be speaking to our own values on some level. And so just taking that and putting it together and really figuring out, creating something that really speaks to you, will really speak to others. I feel like the lines are kind of going to be blurred, I think, going forward in games. Like, I think that you're going to see people making games that aren't really restricted by, I don't want to say restricted, but I don't think you're going to see people making games like, we're making a Western RPG purely because we're guys living in the West, right? Like, we're going to make a typical Western RPG where it's a big open world, you create your character and like all this other stuff. Like, I feel like you're not going to see that as much anymore. I think you're going to see people that just like video games and kind of grew up with all of them. And they're going to be like, hey, I'm going to take all the shit that I liked about video games growing up, and I'm just going to make the kind of games that I liked playing growing up, rather than like, I grew up in this country, so I'm just going to make this thing because that's what we do here. And I think actually that's not just like true with games. I think that's true with like all art in general, is that people are not going to be just doing, constrained is probably a good word. People are not going to be just like constrained to the culture and the country that they're living in. They're probably going to be influenced by everything, all the media being happened in the world across all cultures. And people are probably going to just make something that they find compelling based on all of that, rather than just specific things. And that's not to say that you won't still have like pure Japanese RPGs or pure like Western RPGs, but I think you're going to see a lot of Clair Obscur Expedition 33s where it's going to be like, I don't give a fuck, man. I just want to make a game based on the games I think is cool or cool, I don't care if this is like taboo to do in the West or whatever. I just want to make something that I think is like awesome. So I think that's going to be a more common occurrence. One of the most overt example we have ever gotten of this mentality with the J side of JRPGs, the DS Fire Emblem games. You are a character in that story that doesn't actually engage in the plot proper, but you are a tactician overviewing everything. That's why you are commanding the troops and watching, talking, taking part in an unfolding story, rather than making your own story in a living world. Yeah. And like, that's what's going to happen, is just like, you're going to see like Western things in JRPGs. You're going to see Japanese things in Western RPGs. You're just going to see a lot of people just sharing in games and like styles of games that we like. And we're going to see hybrids of all these different genres that we probably have never seen before. And again, I don't think that means that like the purist culture side will ever disappear. Like, it means we won't get like another Elder Scrolls game or like another like Dragon Quest. Like, because the pure culture stuff will still exist. But I think you'll also see like a lot of hybrid culture stuff as well, and it's going to give birth to like a lot of interesting shit that we would just never have otherwise, right? Like, I mean, honestly, it's already kind of happened to an extent, but it's like happening even more as we go along. But if you think about like Metal Gear, for example, right? Like, if Kojima kind of didn't grow up watching Western films, Metal Gear probably wouldn't exist. So and like heavily influenced by like Western films and stuff. But at the same time, like you look at Metal Gear and it's like this weird blend of like, oh, this is really Western. But then it's also insanely fucking Japanese too at the same time. But the synergy of it, like all together, is something that just doesn't exist. You would never find Metal Gear purely in the West or like purely in Japan without Western influence too. It only happens when like, oh, this is a Japanese guy who like loved Western films, and then he made this thing that like is like this completely unique thing we'd never seen before. And that's what's happening with Expedition 33, right? You have this French guy who fucking loves Japanese games, and now he's making something that like, people in Japan wouldn't make, but other people in the West wouldn't fucking make either. So it's really just fascinating to me. I love this stuff. NSP is right. We live in a media landscape where it's much easier to access your preferred media 24/7. So now people can take more chances to create art that inspires them rather than being stuck working for the next big AAA game or Hollywood blockbuster the whole career. Right. And that's what fascinates me about Guillaume here too, is that he worked at Ubisoft, right? And here is the thing. I think Ubisoft and Square Enix have this one thing in common. We're actually going to talk later in this interview about how they're quite different. But if there's one thing I can say that they have in common, is that I don't think that either one of them would have like I don't think either one of them would have greenlit Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I don't think that either one of them would have been like, yeah, man, like imagine pitching that to them, like either one of them, and being like, yeah, I want to make like a French Final Fantasy game that's also kind of looks like a Persona game on the UI. And it's also kind of got like some near like music. It's a world map. It's more like FF1 through 9. I don't think either one of them they would have been like, what? Square Enix might have been like, okay, but we're not going to give you much budget for it. It's not going to be a flagship, right? I don't think either one of them like would have really greenlit that. So I don't know. When creating a RPG, what kind of experience do you want to provide the player to provide to the player, and what do you want them to feel? Rather than narrowing it down to one answer, there are many different aspects to it. But I've been making Final Fantasy for a long time because I love RPG. I love making RPGs. I think the best thing about RPGs is that they allow you to experience saving the world. After all, saving the world is a great thing, right? Because we want to take users to a world they've never seen before, we pay particular attention to the worldview, and our companions become important, and we grow together and accomplish something. It's a very important aspect of Japanese RPGs. Through these experiences, I hope players can experience the importance of working together with others and the emotional impact of accomplishing something. So I'd be happy a player's heart grow even a little by playing the game. I see, I understand that very well. Also, this may be a rare thought, but I've always thought I hope that people who play my games will want to make games. I want people to know that making games is fun. That hasn't changed in my current job and position, and I actually desire to increase the number of game creators. I want to tell people that creating games is fun. So in that case, your message was definitely conveyed to Guillaume. I think Guillaume became a creator by playing a variety of games. That's a wonderful thing. Well, let's go to the next page. It should translate. There we go. Expedition 33 is like French cuisine for Japanese taste. The creator's originality and creativity were only possible by leaving a major studio. What specific elements of JRPGs influenced Expedition 33? How did you try to express them? On the surface level, first of all, it's the gameplay. Turn-based battle games have a completely different atmosphere in the West and Japan. In recent years, Baldur's Gate has been famous as a representative Western title, but when it comes to other turn-based RPGs, I think many people think of JRPGs. When Expedition 33 was first announced, oh Blitz, what's up, dude? When Expedition 33 was first announced, users' comments made it immediately recognizable as a JRPG, featuring a typical command-based battle system. Of course, It's not just the superficial elements that are influenced by Japanese games, but also the way games are made. For example, in Japanese games, the worldview, gameplay, and music are designed simultaneously, and they all blend together to create a unified work. When I was at Ubisoft, I felt that in Western game development, the general process is to first have an independent team that designs the gameplay, then create the worldview, then finally add the music. Even with these differences in production techniques, I think it's fair to say that Expedition 33 was heavily influenced by JRPGs. So, very interesting. Graphic Squid. What is going on? Is that Barry maybe? I don't know. Anyway, that's very fascinating. I'm a troll, guys. But holy shit, that is very interesting because uh the idea that they have like I do think you can tell in like a lot of Western games that like the music does come in and it's like something at the end. And I really dislike how like personally, my own personal taste, that with a lot of Western games they kind of just add like ambient music at the end. No, I didn't mean US NSP. Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't know what you guys were talking about, so I just read that. And okay. My apologies, Graphic Squid. Okay. Graphic Squid is good, guys. We just lost track of that. Um anyway, what the fuck were we talking about? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll just continue reading here. There are certainly differences in the way they are made. At the core of the game, Expedition 33 has a dark and sad worldview and story. However, as a unique element of JRPGs, it also features comical characters, witty exchanges, and funny scenes. Expedition 33 is packed with all emotions I learned from JRPGs. When I saw the gameplay, I thought if some unique characters were added to this, it would create an atmosphere closer to the FF setting. That feels weirdly translated. Unique na character ga kawattara FF no setting ni chika fuinki ni narana. I mean, no, that's pretty sure that's like what he said. I don't know. It just seems like a weird comment, but that is I do think. Let me see if I can translate this. But that does look like what he's saying. But that kind of like sounds weird in the context of the conversation. Let me check. Okay, yeah, that is what he said. I'm a little bit confused, but let's keep going. With that in mind, I think you'll be able to. Uh, with that in mind, I think you'll be able to experience the emotional expression that's so typical of JRPGs in Expedition 33. If you play it, you'll probably think this is a typical JRPG. I personally love Final Fantasy 15, but if you ask me which part of it I like the most, it's the scene with the four main characters are talking. I especially love the scene where the guys are messing around in the car. Seeing those interactions makes you feel closer to the characters. Those casual scenes become memories with the characters. I'd like to ask Mr. Tabata, what impression did you have of Expedition 33, including what Guillaume said? To be honest, I felt this was a game that only he could make. It was very unique, and I got the impression there was a strong bond between the creator and the work. I think that's the appeal of a small scale video game. But with Expedition 33, it felt like the DNA of the developer Guillaume had been turned into a game. That's why, as I was watching the gameplay, I wondered, why is it so unique? But after hearing Guillaume's explanation, it all makes sense. Expedition 33 not only incorporates the characters and playability of Japanese RPGs, but it also firmly based on the cultures and values that are different from those of the Japanese. It felt like French cuisine suited to Japanese tastes, food prepared by a French specialist with seasonings to suit Japanese tastes. This can only be achieved with a solid understanding of Japan and is something that can be achieved simply by imitating the superficial aspects of the cuisine. I realized that the reason the work is not superficial lies within the creator himself, Guillaume. So very interesting. The JRPG, as most modern gamers know, wouldn't exist without Hank Rogers, a Dutchman who brought Tetris to Nintendo and arguably made the first JRPG, the Black Onyx. Wow, that's crazy. And then also too, Nasser, I'm probably saying his name wrong, for Final Fantasy 1, who is the programmer of FF1. So yeah, you also got to think about stuff like that too. Is this the strength of an independent studio, or is it that you were able to sense the artistry that would be hard to come by at a large studio? Guillaume, you were originally at Ubisoft, right? I think Expedition 33 is full of unique elements that you can't find in games made by major studios. Yes, I have a rant at the end of this. I promise you. Being an independent studio allows each individual's creativity to flourish and creates an environment where it's easy to try new things. I think that's reflected in the game. You can really feel the team's enthusiasm. You can really feel all the staff are on the same boat. And there is an atmosphere of building it together. When this kind of game gets bigger, the production team tends to get dispersed, and the sense of unity tends to fade. But there is no such discomfort with Expedition 33. And with such unique characters added to the mix, it's a bit surprising. No, it really makes you feel they really get it. It's a great picture of Tabby. Okay. So, yeah. That's like the thing, right? Is that nobody at a big AAA studio is making this, right? And it's important to remember these were guys essentially, a lot of them working at big AAA studios like Ubisoft, right? Even Square Enix feels like for their big AAA outings, they can't do like a world map or turn-based combat because they feel that it doesn't sell enough, and it wouldn't reach the target intended audience. Looking back on that, I'm not like 1000% sure is the Rebirth playthrough of on life support. Maybe we can finish it before Expedition 33 comes out. I thought about like doing it like really fast, like all next week, so that we could like knock that out before E33. Sorry, I just wanted to answer that. But essentially, yeah, I feel like big studios wouldn't make this kind of game anymore, and even Square Enix, who is used to making this type of game at a high fidelity, won't make it anymore. Because they feel like it's not appealing enough to a wide enough audience, right? And as much as we discuss action versus turn-based, I think one thing gets kind of swept under the rug during that conversation, and that is the fact that you have to remember the reason the transition from turn-based to action even took place in the first place is because they felt that not a big enough audience would be interested in turn-based RPGs. So they felt like action was necessary in order to garner a new audience. And I supported that because it seemed true, right? Like in general, most turn-based games are not major sellers, and most people don't like really buy games predicated on the fact that they're just turn-based, right? At least not here in the West, where Final Fantasy is probably overall its most popular. Might be debatable, but yeah. Persona, for example, has stayed turn-based since 1996. Okay, what if I told you that even with Persona 5, during its development, they had considered making it an action game? And in part, Persona 5 Strikers was actually like a bit of like proof of concept of like what a Persona action game could look like. But yeah, even during P5's development, they had a similar worry where they were like, maybe we should make Persona action because it would appeal to like a larger audience. So even at that time, for that IP, there was still some concern. Now, thankfully, they didn't make Persona 5 action. Now, maybe, I don't know, if Persona 5 came out and it was an action game, maybe if that did come out, like, it would have blown up. I don't know. Who could say for sure? But the Persona 5 that they did make definitely did blow up. That's the timeline that we got, and it did really, really well. And so, yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't think that like switching away from turn-based alone is like what made the situation with Final Fantasy like be the way it is. I think that's like kind of ridiculous in some ways because people were definitely willing to try action with 15, right? Like look at 15 sales. So it's hard to say that like, oh, because Final Fantasy switched to action, that's why the sales aren't there anymore. I know a lot of people make that argument, but I don't necessarily agree with it. I think it is a semi factor in the argument, but it's not the entire argument. The problem that FF is having is multifactorial for sure. One of those issues is that there is an alienation of the longer time fans of the series, particularly those from the PlayStation era, PS1, PS2. But I don't think that holistically is the problem, right? Because there's two fronts that they're losing the war, right? That's keeping the established audience and attracting a new audience. And right now, they're kind of not really doing either. Let's just be real. It's just FF7 and FF10 fans. I mean, to be fair, those are like the biggest selling ones. And so there clearly is something that was done with 7 and 10 that did reach an enormous audience. So, I mean, maybe you could make an argument there. But I think FF8 sold really well. Even 13 sold pretty decently too. At the risk of being yelled at, I think FF14 fans are also the beginning to be a part of that. In what way? I'm curious. Why are we having like FF13 discourse in the YouTube chat? I will weigh in on this just to settle it. I think the linearity in 13 is not good. Like the way it's implemented isn't good. In terms of like the fugitive stuff, like there are ways to make being a fugitive interesting gameplay wise, but they didn't do any of that. They just made it about running down a tube. So maybe if they made it like in a way that you had to do like espionage stuff in order to survive, and you have to like you have to like sneak around, or it was like maybe more part of the gameplay mechanics that like you were a fugitive, and they made that like actually interesting. I mean, yeah, I don't think fugitive is like, yeah, I don't think it's, I mean, the linearity is not the problem, really, right? Because principally, you could say, yeah, being a fugitive means I have to like keep going. I can't stop. But it doesn't mean that like there's only like one thing I can do. Like, and like every single place I go for some reason is shaped like a giant rectangle, like a really long rectangle. Like a really, really, really long rectangle, right? Um, so I don't agree that like 13's design had to be that way. It objectively did not. It's just what they chose to do. And what they chose is something that like didn't like really resonate with a lot of people. But also too, I would go as far as to say that like because games are about telling a story that's fun to interact with, if the story you have is not fun to interact with, then you inherently have chosen a bad story for a game. If a story is not fun to interact with, then you've written a story for a book or a movie, but you haven't wrote the story for a game. And so even if it was true that say, as a fugitive, you have to run down a really long rectangle and there's nothing else in the world that could ever happen. And that's what all fugitives are doing right now in real life, or they're like running down like this really long tube. Uh, then, then yeah, like sure. But like, then that's like a better story for a film than a video game where people have to interact with it. So you have to make sure that you're including the interaction part. A new lore trailer for Clair Obscur just dropped. Can someone link that on YouTube in the chat? And we can watch it together. Okay. Mr. Tabata, do you feel that the inclusion of unique characters gives the game a Japanese feel? Of course, I think so. I think it's very important that video games don't lean too much toward a particular philosophy and that everyone can enjoy them. In RPGs, having a variety of characters means that any player can find a character that suits them and connect with more deeply with the world through that character. That breadth was something I was conscious of when I was making FF, so I was surprised to see that this game was making such a thorough understanding of that point. Um, Also, Japanese RPGs seem to be games that are based on manga and anime and are generally accessible and have a wide appeal. On the other hand, Western RPGs tend to be more sophisticated and aimed at adults, like novels turned into games. For example, Wizardry and Baldur's Gate have a more literary approach to sorry. For example, Wizardry and Baldur's Gate have a more literary approach. But Guillaume's games have a lot of comic elements in them. I think that's really unique. I'm sorry, I'm talking from a creator's perspective. Japanese RPGs are made to be easy for anyone to play, while European RPGs are more core and aimed at adults. This game successfully combines both elements. As we talked, it started to make sense to me. Kind of related to this convo, I finally went back to beat Shadow of the Colossus and looked up why Japan Studios shuttered, and it was because of a lack of belief in AA studios. Yeah, and I think that if Clair Obscur Expedition 33 like blows up, and this ends up being a game that people love, we're basically going to have to like reevaluate entirely um, what that means, right? Like what is going on with AA games. Like AA games, if this game actually does review well, it might turn the entire industry on its head. because there are so many things about this game that like basically shouldn't exist, right? Like a double A game, turn-based world map, realistic high fidelity graphics. What are you doing? Right? Like this is something that in general that like I feel like hasn't it's not supposed to exist. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that's why people kind of became like immediately entranced by this game because is that the right word? Entranced. Fixated on this game is because it's like, oh, nobody is supposed to be making this. I almost felt like when I looked at the game for the first time, I was like, is this legal? Can they do this? Can they make this? Is it okay? Like, you know, because it's the sort of thing that the industry tells us we're not supposed to be making, right? Like, this is not the kind of game that sells. It's not the kind of game that people are interested in anymore on like a broad spectrum, right? Now, people will say that like Square Enix still makes turn-based games. Sure, they do, but they relegate them to be like more like HD 2D games. They don't like really spend the same amount of budget that they do in terms of the visuals, right? So there hasn't been like a high fidelity turn-based Square Enix game that I can like really name off the top of my head in terms of having these types of like more like realistic graphics that you would expect from like Final Fantasy X or like Lost Odyssey and those types of games, right? 219 million copies sold day one, I hope. I would love to see this game break like 2 or 3 million. If this game breaks like 3 million especially, I think that'd be like really interesting. I might be like talking out of my butt like with it selling like 3 millions because it is on Game Pass, and so a lot of people will pick it up on Game Pass. But if the game does end up selling big, yeah, I don't know. I feel this could end up being a game that makes us reevaluate these sorts of things. The game is quite long. It's with 30 hours of main story alone and another 30 hours of side content. Brother, actually, that's the perfect video game length. That's how long all the Golden Age JRPGs were. Golden Age JRPGs were not 200 hours. Did you guys know that like 100 plus hour RPGs is like not like that's like a recent thing? It's not like a actual like, oh, RPGs have always been like standard 100 hours. That has actually not been the case. That's like a brand new thing. That's like the bloat. And I'm going to be honest, most games, not all, but most games should not be 100 fucking hours. Most games that are 100 hours, and not to say that even most games that are 100 hours are bad, but most of them would still probably benefit from being shorter. Yeah, if this game does well, then why not just start making a bunch of AA turn-based games every few years rather than one big AAA action RPG that takes 4 to 6 years of development? We could see a big trend shift because right now it feels like AA is completely dead in the West. AA kind of is dead in the West. AA like really thrives mostly in Japan. So my biggest hope for the reception of this game is that AA in the West here turns around, and then all of a sudden we have a strong, thriving AA industry. Because right now we're kind of on the verge of AAA. I don't want to say collapsing, but let's just say politely like resetting, right? And I am not like one of those people that will go out and say AAA shouldn't exist. I do love a good AAA game. Like I do love like, you know, every now and then to get a God of War, you know? I do love me a good movie game. I'm sorry for all the anti-movie game haters in the chat, the Nintendo fans, the Xbox fans. I like a good movie game, god damn it. But I don't think that the industry can keep chasing that. And I think that like maybe a select few will be able to do the movie game going forward, but I think for most people, for most developers, the movie game should not be the answer that we're striving for. But I'm at the last chapter of Metaphor ReFantasio, and as amazing as it was, I'm really burnt out and wanted for it to end. Yeah, no. I mean, Metaphor was like a lot shorter than P5, but even then, Metaphor would have probably benefited from being like 20 hours shorter. Honestly, I'm going to be real with you guys. This is an extremely hot take. There are very few games that I play nowadays, very few, that like after I finish it, I sit down and say, wow, that game was appropriate in length. Very few. Very few. Most games I play and they're long, and I always think, damn, they could have got rid of like 10, 20 hours and that would have been a better game. If they like didn't do stuff. And so I'm going through Metaphor right now, and I had to take a break from it after 55 hours. I suspect I'm only halfway through. No, at 55 hours, you're probably almost done. The game actually ends in October, unlike other like Atlas calendar games that would end like, toward the end of the year. So you're actually probably pretty close, Demon Guy. I'm 137 hours in Metaphor. Okay. Maybe I just like speed ran the game. But I did all the social links and like all the side quests and stuff. Even FF16. Oh my god, brother. Oh my god, brother. FF16 as a 20-hour game would have been awesome. It would have been so much better. In fact, like one of the big problems with FF16 is that like because it's so long, the pace in which you get abilities drags, and so you get stuck with like a couple basic icons for like a really, really long time, way longer than you should. And it also is paced in such a way that like makes it drag it compared to other hack and slash games, right? FF16 took me 90 hours. Granted, I did everything. Really? 90? It took me like 60 something ish. I just got the platinum for 16 the other day. Final Fantasy mode is really boring. Yeah. MMO RPG Al, thank you so much for the super chat. My guess is that Clair Obscur Expedition 33 does as well as Pirate Yakuza. Love your work. Wait, how well did Pirate Yakuza do? And also, again, thank you for so much for the super chat, because actually I have no idea how well that did. Metaphor somehow felt long yet really badly paced in the back end. Like some stuff happened so fast, and then last month is just 30 days of free time. Yeah. Did you do FF mode too? I'm going to be honest. After I completed the game, I was so burnt out on it, and I did not enjoy the combat enough to be like, I want to do it again. Especially after hearing that FF mode wasn't like brutally hard, and that you have to unlock Ultimaniac for it to be, right? The lore trailer dropped. Okay, let's take a look. Hold on, let me pull it up.
Rated M for mature.
It's been 67 years
Oh, let
since
me
the
move my
world
big
broke
ass
apart.
head.
67 years since Lumiere was flung into the sea. 67 years since she appeared and painted her first number. Expedition after expedition have tried to stop her. Idealists, fighting for the future of Lumiere. Academics, obsessed with the secrets of the monolith. And those poor souls who just want their deaths to mean something. None have ever returned. And neither will I. But at least I'll have seen something of this world. Seen what lies outside the domes of Lumiere. I'll have walked the path of all the expeditions who came before us. Tomorrow, the paintress will wake. And tomorrow, we sail into the unknown. Even if we fail, we lay the trail for those who come after. We are Expedition 33.
Amazing. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. Man, I'm just reading the comments here. I don't think I've ever been more sold on an original title in my life. Looks stunning as usual. Even if we fail, we lay the trail for those who come after. Hype. The hype for the game seems real. Like, it's super strong. Like, people really are into this game. It is some of, like, the most hype I've personally seen for a new IP in a while, right? This seems like a quick video that could play before the title screen. It does kind of have that vibe. Again, I don't know, man. My biggest hope is that this game has the kind of impact that I'm looking for, the type of like reception from fans and from critics, and also in terms of sales, that really kind of like, you know, really elevate this so that we can get more games like it. Subtext, thank you for the super chat. A near release story trailer that doesn't spoil everything. Another lesson that Square can learn. Yeah. Yeah. Because dude, it's so funny because I feel like with Square Enix like final trailers, we already like know how the game ends before we get there. Also too, if we could go back to the trailer, I just want to like kind of point out too, when we talk about like AA games, I don't know about you guys. Oh, why is the quality 720p? Let's go to 4K.
But
I feel like I look at this game, and remember, this game was made by like 30 people, right? It was made by 30 people. But like when we talk about like graphics and stuff, I feel like this game looks gorgeous, right? I feel like graphics are good enough. I don't know about you guys, but like most of the games I play nowadays look good. Like there aren't too many games I play and they look ugly. I would say most games look good, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Honestly, like whether a game looks good or bad now comes down to the art direction. Because graphics are so good that it's just like, I don't know. Unreal Engine homogenization? I don't agree. Here's my counterpoint for like people saying like Unreal Engine homogenization. I don't think Clair Obscur looks like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I don't think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth looks like Persona 3 Reload. And I don't think any of those games look like Stellar Blade. All of those games are Unreal Engine. Actually, like, if anything, like the stuff that like gets homogenized from Unreal Engine is like the tech stuff, like the stuttering issues from shader compilation, etc. But like in terms of like the art style, all the games look pretty different, I think. Let's see. Let me finish reading this. The game is quite long, with 30 hours of main story content, main story alone, and another 30 hours of side content. That's why I thought if the story continued in a serious manner, the distance between the player and the character would become increasingly distant. So we make the games more relatable to players by including scenes of everyday life, scenes where the characters goof around and highlight their individual personalities. We think these elements play a role in getting closer to players. That's a very convincing way of thinking. I'd like to ask Guillaume, do you consider turn-based battles in RPGs to be something Japanese? Oh man, what's funny about this is that a lot of people used to argue, like, they would say essentially that action is Western and JRPG equal turn-based. Obviously, that is like so not true, but that's like the way a lot of people used to say things were. I think a lot of people snapped out of that, but and also too, I understand why people thought that, because like the only turn-based games that were coming out were Japanese, and most of the JRPGs were turn-based during a particular era, so I understand the association, even if in actuality it's not quite true. Guillaume says, I think that even among turn-based battles, games like Expedition 33 have a strong Japanese feel. When Western players see it, there are elements that make them think, this is a JRPG. As I mentioned earlier, when the trailer for this game was first released, the moment the video of the battle system was shown after the story introduction, the audience's reaction completely changed, and they were instantly absorbed in the game. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like, when I first saw the game, right? Like, when I first saw, like, the first few seconds of the trailer, the painter stuff they were talking about, I was like, yeah, okay. And then I saw the command menu pop up. And it looked like Personas. And I was like, wait. And there were turn-based battles. And then I saw like parried. And like, I was like, wait, what? That's what I like locked in, right? I was semi locked in like when I first saw the trailer and I heard Ben Starr's voice. I was like, oh cool. Ben Starr is in like a new Souls-like. That's where I thought this was going, right? And then I saw it was turn-based, and I was like, oh, shit. In a weird way, Expedition 33 is merging the turn-based and action in the complete opposite way to Re-Trilogy. It's really interesting to see. Yeah. When thinking about Western turn-based RPGs, it's easy to imagine games like Baldur's Gate or early Fallout. Both of these games essentially feature a single character moving around a vast world with combat systems in which that character selects commands individually. In contrast, JRPGs, 3 or more characters line up side by side, and the main style is to fight by selecting commands as if it were a single cutscene. This feature is unique to JRPGs. The importance of music. When you started your studio, we had a lot of opinions for what kind of games you could make. You had a lot of opinions. To put it bluntly, it wasn't necessarily necessary to make an RPG. So, what was your reason for choosing the RPG genre? I was also quite curious about this. Did you start by deciding to make an RPG, or did it develop from a different idea and become an RPG? I was wondering what the process was. Expedition 33 started as a solo passion project while I was working at Ubisoft with a simple idea. I wanted to make a turn-based battle game that I wanted to play. After that, Tom, the lead programmer of Expedition 33, joined us, and the two of us spent about a year and a half creating a demo. In the process, we decided to make it a proper RPG. That meant we needed music, so we decided to hire a composer first. And the team gradually expanded. Guys, that's fucking crazy. They hired a composer first. For those wholly unfamiliar with game development, that doesn't happen. You hire like artists, programmers. You don't hire the music guy. The music guy comes like way later. Usually they introduce the music guy after they built like a prototype up. They said, nah, we need music first. And that's pretty crazy. Because that just does not happen anywhere. Concept writers, yeah. But you're not hiring like the music guy first. People don't do that usually. Mostly because the music guy doesn't have much to do until like a lot of the concepts are nailed down. So, you typically have like your composer come in at a later point. That's right. Then in 2020, we created a prototype with a team of about 6 to 7 people and established the studio. It was at that time we called in Francois to oversee the operation as a way to run it as a full-fledged business. It cost a lot of money, but I have no regrets because I was able to create a game that I really wanted to play. That's a great story. When you went independent, it seems like a pretty unusual decision to bring a composer into your team right from the start. Was it because you felt that the music was an important element of the RPG you had in mind? I can't say for sure that music is an important feature of JRPGs, but as someone who has been playing Japanese games since I was a child, I feel the importance of music in games. In fact, I spend my days listening to game soundtracks. In a sense, even if you don't play the game again, the memories and scenes from that time are connected to the music. So I think music is one of the best things to evoke memories. For example, just listening to Balam Garden in FF8 brings back vivid memories of that scene. I can't help but get teary-eyed. That's why I wanted to be extremely particular about the music in the game I was making, wanting to create a game that would stay in people's hearts. I added a composer to the team at the very beginning. As time goes by, I may start to think about games I played in the past and think, maybe my memories are biased, maybe they weren't that great after all. But the music is one thing that never fades. Completely agree. You work on the premise that the person composing music will fully understand the game's content from the very beginning of game development. It's a very Japanese way of thinking. Guillaume, the composer understands the story and characters on the same level as the scriptwriter, if not more so. We've been sharing the direction of the game since the early stages and working together on the creative process. He has given up other work and is now devoting himself to this project as a full-time composer. The music for Expedition 33 is not just a job for him, but a heartfelt life's work. That's awesome. And if you guys haven't seen, I think...
Somehow.
C'est vraiment le...
Oh yeah, this is an interview with him. They also have like a live performance 2 video out that I recommend. So the trigger was a divine revelation. Blah, blah, blah. Let's get into the interview. In this game, the number 33 which represents death, is used as a hook to draw players in. But what aspect did you keep in mind when it came to storytelling of the entire tale? Regarding the story idea, when I decided to start the company 4 years ago, I rebooted all the stories I had made up until then. The stories up until then were a little difficult to explain, so I decided to just rewrite them. And then I spent about 3 months discussing them with my team. As for the number 33, to be honest, I can only say it was a divine revelation. One day, I woke up and thought, this might be interesting. The curse countdown progresses, and as the number decreases, people of that age die. I thought it'd be interesting if there was a system like that. When I first told Francois about this idea, he only responded with a lukewarm, I think that's a pretty great idea. I thought it was an invention. However, I thought there needed to be a reason for it, rather than just the curse countdown happening. One of the core ideas was the French novel. Yeah, don't ask me to say that. It's a very complex and deep French story about an expedition team that ventures into unknown territory and follows the trail of past expeditions as they go on an adventure. Interesting. I might need to read this then. It's a science fiction novel by French author characterized by its unique writing style and philosophical themes set in a world dominated by constant wind. Story follows protagonist as the 34th Expeditionary Force in pursuit of the source of the wind. Interesting. I really like the theme of the trail left by our predecessors, and I wonder if I could incorporate that into the game's story. For example, when a climber ascends a difficult mountain, he or she may come across footprints or traces of previous climbers along the way. Seeing the bolts and ropes, you can sense they climbed this route as someone gave up here. I thought these footprints of those who had challenged us in the past would add depth to the story. I thought, but by combining the curse countdown of the number 33 mentioned earlier, I could create something that was more than just a gimmick, but one that had a message to convey as a story. So the countdown doesn't start at 33, but a different number. It starts with 100. The curse countdown advances by 1 each year. To explain a little more, from the moment the curse number is engraved, a 1-year grace period is given. When the 1 year has passed, since the curse number 33 was written, everyone over the age of 33 will die, or rather disappear from this world. The expedition team in Expedition 33 is made up of the last generation that can only survive for 1 year. Basically, people who are 33 years old. An RPG story begins somewhere in the flow of time, but that's what's interesting, is that flow itself becomes the basis of an adventure. I think it's extremely well done, not just as a story, but also in terms of game design and world building. It's not just a setting, it's properly integrated into the whole game, and it's well mixed. Thank you. I think it's a really amazing that this idea started with make the turn-based game that I wanted to make. When creating a game, the themes that are particularly important to Mayor, what the fuck is that word? I don't know. How do I leave behind proof that I lived, and what do I want to convey to future generations? Jesus was also 33 when he died. Oh, that's awesome. That's really interesting. I wonder if there is meant to be a parallel there. We made sure to. Oh, to me, okay. Yeah, I think the translate kind of like bunched it together. You're right. The things that are particularly important to me are, how do I leave behind proof I lived, and what do I want to convey to future generations? We made sure to express this clearly in the game and placed a great importance on having characters feel the same way. It really shows what you value. None of the elements are superficial or made superficially, but are all firmly integrated. It is impressive how the game incorporates Japanese elements while carefully creating realism. Just listening to the story, I feel like I can imagine the overall picture of the game. Well, I have a question for you. What do you think will actually happen in the game in the future? Well, I probably shouldn't say. It would be uncool if I missed it. Recently, I've had less time to play games. I really want to try this game because it's so new. It's not just new on the surface, but it feels like a reconstruction of Japanese RPGs, including the mechanics and worldview. It seems like it's packed with the kind of fun experiences that you get in a Japanese RPG. It's not just serious, it's also fun to play. With the reevaluation of JRPGs, it seems like there are more and more JRPG style games made in the West. I feel like a lot of these games are made with the intention of copying JRPGs or getting as close to JRPGs as possible, but I didn't want to go in that direction. Rather than simply imitating JRPGs, I took my own values, the French culture I was born and raised in, art direction, and the other elements as the base, then infuse them with the essence of JRPGs. I was very conscious of taking that approach. Yeah, I think that's like a good idea. Like, you know, he could have just made like anime looking characters in a very anime looking world and like called it a day, right? And just been like, oh guys, look at my JRPG. We're so close to JRPGs. We're basically a JRPG. I'm glad they didn't do that because I think that they made something that looks more unique. And it looks like something that the grand total of it makes it kind of look like something that the West wouldn't make, but also Japan wouldn't make either, right? Tabata says that really came across. It's clear that they're not making it according to the rule book. When I first made FF, I tried to do it as the textbook said, and I got quite a bit of flack. Why were you angry? I think that's translated wrong. Yeah. That reads more like, why did they get angry at you? This is like the laredu form, which is like, yeah, passive form. And so it's more like someone getting angry at you versus you getting angry at them. So the translator kind of fucked up there. I could instantly tell that was the case because this sentence here, actually, let me double check real quick. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds, yeah. So the tone is that they got mad at him. The people who had created the original up until then told us it's not like that. When I joined Square Enix, the people who had worked on early Final Fantasy games were there, so they were able to see me work directly. But on the other hand, they would often lecture me saying, "You're asking me to make FF since you joined later. They must be expecting something new. So why are you intimidating? Not intimidating. Intimidating. Why can't I say it? Why are you copying something from the past? I don't know why my brain like fucking imitating. Okay, I don't know why I couldn't say it. I felt like I was having a stroke right then. Imitating. What the hell's wrong with me? I had terrible insomnia last night. I couldn't sleep. I think I've slept like a total of 2 hours. I know how it's said, Jonah. I know how it's said. I literally was having a stroke there. Imitating. Why are you imitating something from the past? Besides FF15, we have created various other FF titles from the beginning. From the very beginning, we were always told, don't do it formulaically and don't imitate. So, what Guillaume said, FF is always a new game, is correct. But on the other hand, when I asked him, what do we need to protect? He told me, think for yourself. There were no guidelines whatsoever, and yet the finished product was criticized. But it was a truly... I have a lot to say about this, as you can imagine. Don't do it formulaically and don't imitate. Am I insane for feeling like Square Enix took that mindset way too far? Given the last 20 years of everything? Yeah. 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 Guillaume saying, listening to your story, I'm really envious. When I was at Ubisoft, there were clearly defined guidelines and rulebooks for making sequels and sequels to a series. And the thinking was, let's not take risk and stick to the framework of the series. Nico, thank you for the tier 1. Dude, thank you for being with us for 55 months. Jesus, man. You came in at a good time. When I was at Ubisoft, there were clearly defined guidelines in the rulebooks for making sequels to a series, and the thinking was, let's not take risks and stick to the framework of the series. Of course, that approach may be the right approach commercially, but I personally found it lacking. It's the complete opposite of when I worked on FF. However, back then, social media wasn't as developed as it was today, and fans' voices weren't as visible. Although there was the internet, there weren't as many ways to find out what fans thought directly. So that's why people say don't copy, but on the other hand, they also say FF fans need to keep up. It's necessary to find a balance. We need to present a new FF while facing our fans head on. However, if we didn't have any clear guidelines within the company, so even something like whether or not to include a chocobo wasn't an essential part of creating a new FF. Okay. So, you have two extremes here, right? You have two extremes. You have one extreme that is Square Enix and says, we have literally no guidelines at all. Nothing. We don't even have you don't even have to include the series mascot or anything. There are no guidelines for what to do. And then you have Ubisoft, which is you need to literally make the same shit again. Chad, I want you to tell me if I'm wrong for thinking this, but I think for maintaining a long ongoing series, neither of those types of thinking is okay. I think both of those types of thinking is kind of broken to me. With how things are being approached. You need a bit of both. Yeah, you need a bit of both. You need a bit of this is the series and this is what the series is. And if this doesn't fit the series, then we need to create a new IP. But you also need to be well, we need to change and we need to be able to push the series in new directions, because if we can't push the series in new directions, then essentially the series is going to get stale after a while. So we have to continue to reinvent and never be too comfortable in one place, right? A case of two extremes. Yeah. I mean, it's literally two types of holy shit. Neither of those things are how you should be thinking about this. But okay. But this also explains kind of Ubisoft and Square Enix as a whole, doesn't it? It kind of explains both of their situations really well. Ubisoft is continuing to make the same game over and over and over again. Square Enix is making a randomly different thing each time and presenting it as the brand, and then wondering why they're getting so much backlash each time for not having any guidelines or not having any identity for the brand. And so again, when you look at both Ubisoft and Square Enix having those philosophies and the problems they have, they really are kind of a manifestation of that exact thing. This is a clusterfuck way of handling IPs, especially when they farm out titles and then clap back at work, present it with the phrase, doesn't feel Final Fantasy enough, without providing set company guidelines. Yeah. That's the thing. That's the thing that I don't understand. And honestly, is it true that to say that it's not Final Fantasy if they're imitating something else? Because Final Fantasy has imitated a lot of shit, to be honest. Even during the Golden Age, there was a lot of imitation. I'm enjoying your live stream, but your sister keeps coming into my room because she thinks your eyes are super sexy. That's funny. 16 is more Game of Thrones than Final Fantasy with that logic. Right. Well, I mean, yeah. Then wouldn't 16 be Game of Thrones? Would 15 be the Western films that inspired it? With the original FF was basically a D&D clone. The franchise started with an imitation. Yeah, I mean, bro, motherfucking, what do you call it? Final Fantasy 11 was an imitation. like of like not Eve Online, but what was the name of that? Was it Eve Online? No, what was the name of the EverQuest? EverQuest. That's what I'm thinking of. Yes. Thank you, chat. FF11 was like an imitation of. So I don't even know if that's true. Like I don't know if that's actually even necessarily true. It's like most of the board and higher up of Square Enix doesn't have creative directions and are just trying to make business moves with no clear direction. I think that like okay, that is kind of like what it is, right? Like when we talk about the switch from turn-based to action combat, the thing that a lot of people don't keep in mind when we have this discussion, because they get into like the gameplay comparisons or like all that other stuff, but they forget that the reason this happened in the first place was not because of any of that. The reason that the game switched from turn-based to action, and this is not to say that turn-based is bad or that turn-based is inherently better or the action FF games suck or anything like that, but the objective reason that that happened was because they wanted to make more money and they thought they could do that with action and not turn-based. That is the fundamental reason that that shift happened, right? Now, in a way, it's good because I do think that, like, say, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's combat system is better than, like, probably any of the battle systems that came before it, right? But objectively speaking, like, the reason was financial for, like, why they thought they had to move to action. And I don't know if it would be the case that FF games would sell more if they stuck with turn-based, or FF games would sell less, right? None of us really know unless you travel the multiverse and you know for a fact that if FF stuck with turn-based, they literally like sold more, right? We can say that 15 sold really well, right? That is action, one of the best-selling titles in the series. But even with 15, I don't think that necessarily people gravitated to it because of the quality of its combat, because the quality of its combat is largely disputed by many fans. So, I don't know. I think that's true. If a modern FF game sells 10 million plus copies in the West, that would quickly become the established formula and they would milk it to death just like Ubisoft does with Assassin's Creed, I think. No, yeah, for sure. For sure. Like, I don't think that, like, if a new Final Fantasy game was to come out, that they wouldn't, and it sold that much, that they wouldn't do that, and that they wouldn't be like, oh, this is the new formula for Final Fantasy. I mean, it definitely is what happened with Zelda, right? Because Zelda games were getting stale, and Skyward Sword didn't really sell that much, and so they reinvented with Breath of the Wild, and then Breath of the Wild sold a crap ton of units. Now, if Breath of the Wild didn't sell well, they probably would have been like, oh, you know, no one knows what the future of Zelda holds. But Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom together sold like 50 million units. And with the Switch 2 versions, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are probably going to reach, you know, like 100 million over the course of their lifetime together. And so, essentially, like, yeah, man, like, now they're saying that open air is the future of all Zelda games for the foreseeable future. I think FF15's mainstream success was due to the open world games sell like crazy. I do think that advertising it as an open world game was something that like really helped. I think that they made a mistake with Rebirth not advertising it as open world, because I think that if they did, it would have helped Rebirth a lot. Because listen, there's a reason that like a lot of like game descriptions will just say open world RPG. Like in like the beginning of the pitch, like before anything else, they'll be like, in this open world RPG, open world action RPG. Because that in itself is a selling point. And even if the games aren't really quite open world, they'll still kind of like spin them as like an open world action RPG. Like Nier Automata, for example, like that game, I guess it's an open world game. It's not really. It's kind of like a small like hub world with like different interconnected zones. But guess what Square Enix like marketed Nier Automata as, right? They marketed as an open world action RPG with multiple endings. Which makes it sound like it's a lot grander in scope than like what it actually is. I say this, I don't mean that in a way to belittle Automata, by the way. It's like one of my favorite games of all time, like a top 10 game of all time for me. But yeah, they make it sound like it is like an Elder Scrolls with that type of description. But like really it's not. But they use this is an open world action RPG as this way to make you like to like really be like a headliner thing that like, because a lot of people are looking for exactly that, an open world action RPG with multiple endings. That's a big selling thing, right? 6.5 million sales lost between 15 and 16. Well, 3.5 million wasn't like a real number. That was made up. And the guy that made it up kind of came out and said that he made it up. So, we don't know what 16 sold, but my guess is 4 to 4.5 million. People just go crazy for open world marketing pitch because it easily communicates, even if the story or gameplay is generic, it'll be fun to explore. Right. And I think open world is getting to a point now where it's a bit played out anyway. I don't even think open world games are necessarily like fun to explore anymore. I think they kind of just tell you to go to a place and to do a thing, and then you just go do it. For the most part, every now and then you get like an Elden Ring, but like for the most part, Elden Ring is not like normal. You know what I'm saying? Like Elden Ring is not the average experience with open world by far. It is like the grand exception, like one of the grand exceptions. And so most open world games, I don't know if I would say that they really have like true feelings of exploration. So let's go back to the interview. However, there was in one game where a chocobo dies, type 0. At that time, I was called by my senior who created the chocobo in FF. He asked me a lot of questions. Why did you want to do that? Can you imagine that call? He was like, hey, I heard you wanted to kill a chocobo, and I was just wondering, like, what the fuck, actually? what the fuck would, like, possess you to do that? That's so fucking funny. Why'd you kill my pet? Yeah. Bro, imagine drawing, like a really cute chocobo and just being like, this is my creation. And then, like, 20 years later, some guy's going to be like, okay, we're going to open the game by killing this thing. Oh, man. Is this an episode from the production of Final Fantasy Type 0? That scene left a strong impression on me, so there was a story behind that. At that time, the senior had already gone independent, but someone in the game saw the scene where the chocobo dies and contacted him. He told me to talk about it once. So after I asked him directly, there's a scene where a chocobo dies. Is that okay? He immediately said, what? Show me. I was asked a lot of questions like, why is this scene necessary? But after I explained my thoughts and intention, they finally said, I understand. Okay. Guillaume. I'll say it again. That scene was so shocking that I remember it well. Even now, nearly 15 years after I played the game, it was such a memorable scene that I can immediately share my thoughts about it. I think that by incorporating things that would surprise the people who have been creating the FF series, we can add a bit of newness to the tradition. By adding something new that is acceptable to the people who created the tradition, it becomes an innovation and eventually becomes a new tradition. I think I suggested that this is how IP can spread. Okay, that's really sound. that actually is the way things work. You know, for example, FF didn't really have card games, but then FF8 added card games and people love it. And like, okay, well now Triple Triad and having a card game in the game is like part of the identity, right? So I do agree with Tabata very strongly here. And that's the way FF should be, right? Like it shouldn't be like, oh, you can't do that. That's not the thing. Does Tabata actually understand what we were just talking about? Yeah. That's the way it feels. That's the way it feels. It feels more like that maybe Tabata didn't like understood what we were talking about, but then like the higher ups above Tabata didn't understand or don't understand. Because it's kind of sounded like Tabata like wanted to do like some traditional FF stuff, and then they were all like, no, you need to make a brand new thing. You need to not like try to make FF. That makes me think he gets it, but couldn't practice that at Square Enix for whatever reason. Yeah, that's exactly the vibe that I get too. However, I was told don't be so cheeky, so I had to keep trying and not give up. At the time, I thought, this is the new Final Fantasy. I'm glad you felt that way. In the future, if someone sees a game that Guillaume made and thinks, I want to make this game too, they'll be faced with a similar situation. How do you protect the traditions that you created? How do you change them? What are your thoughts on this, Guillaume? Guillaume, I hope they destroy it. France is historically known for demonstrations and rebellions. That's funny. Explains why Dawn of the Future seems so much more traditional. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it can really kind of explain too with Nomada, like being like, "Hey, let's make Final Fantasy VII Remake like a remake of FF7." What is this interview? It's an interview with Guillaume Broche of Clair Obscur Expedition 33 and Hajime Tabata of Final Fantasy 15. Very weird collaboration, but super cool. It's something I didn't expect. I would love to see him sit down with like other Japanese creatives, especially ones at Square Enix. So if we could get like an interview like this from like Yoshi P and him, and from Kitase or Nomina. Tabata was part of Expedition 33. No, he was not. This is just like literally an interview where two dudes who make games sit down. They're not working on anything together. I agree with Nomina keeping 7 as 7, but I also agree with Tabata trying something new. That's also, I mean, that's the thing though. That's the thing, is that you're supposed to keep the thing, but then also make it new too. There's a balance in there. And I think that most people read it like one way or the other, especially when I say, hey, FF should have some type of loose framework that it's using. A lot of people are like, no, you don't want the games to change. And I'm like, no, dude, I want the games to like explore settings that they never have. And I want the characters to be different. And I want all this stuff to be like way different in like ways that it's never been before. But also it kind of needs to have some type of like framework and like fundamental traditions that it abides by, so that it can have some sense of brand continuity between the things. Otherwise, it's just a collection of random things together that don't really have any sense of continuity. The continuity is the fact that Shiva and Chocobo show up, which isn't like really ideal for a video game series to be. I hope Tabata gets to spread his wings, because I felt like he was given a shit show and restrictions and story to push out. Yeah, he was given some tough stuff to push out, for sure. Would you say that Re-Trilogy at the moment doesn't seem to have that balance narratively, but otherwise it has it bang on in gameplay? Because I would. It's really hard to comment on Re-Trilogy in that context, because Re-Trilogy is a remake, and then it's also trying to do something new. And I just don't fully know where Re-Trilogy is going to even be able to say. But I do think that Re-Trilogy gameplay wise is like the first thing where it's like where I felt like this is it. This is like reinventing classic FF gameplay, but it's also brand new. Re-Trilogy feels like the logical evolution of FF, if that makes sense, in terms of like the way those games are made. That feels like the direction of like, okay, this is trying to get back into that area of classic FF in terms of combat. So I think that's the direction they should keep punching in. The balance FF used to have was command battles, airships, and world map exploration system. Everything else was allowed to change game to game. Then we lost the world map system in Final Fantasy X. Then lost the command system by 15. So now the original DNA just isn't there anymore. Yeah, that's a perfect way of putting it. That's a perfect way of putting it. So now we don't have anything. And now like the continuity between FF games is tenuous at best. Like the connection there is not there, to be blunt. You know, it's like I was saying, hold on. I have someone's using a blow dryer in there. So let me turn on I'll turn on my noise suppression. Hopefully I don't get too choppy here. But what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so there's not like really a thing that any of this is like rooted on anymore. And as a result, you know, suppose I play Final Fantasy 13 and I think it's the greatest thing ever. What happens when I play 15 or 16? Or, you know, like what happens if I did play Final Fantasy 16 and I thought FF16 was like the greatest game in the entire world? But then there is never any game that is even remotely similar to FF16. Now, I want to be clear here. I do think the developers of Final Fantasy game, including and especially Sakaguchi, do think that FF is meant to be a thing that is completely new and reinvents itself entirely each game. I do think that is their perception of it, like 100%. Even at the top of the top in terms of the FF pecking order, that being like Sakaguchi, like spiritually speaking, I think even he thinks that. But I don't think that like, I think that what the developers think and the reality of what they created in the first 10 games especially does not actually line up, right? Like as evident by the spirits within, I don't think that Sakaguchi has like this very specific notion about like what Final Fantasy is supposed to be, right? I think it matters more to us than it does to them. I don't think that they have like that type of specific view in mind. However, inadvertently, what they did with the first 10 games and especially the first 9 games is create that sense of like continuity, that sense of like, okay, this is a series and it reinvents itself each time. But there is still fundamental elements that are game to game that it does feel like I'm playing something within a similar series, right? And so I think they had that, even if it was not their intention to consciously choose to create that. And they thought that like, yeah, each time FF can be whatever. FF doesn't have to be nailed down to like a singular thing, right? Yeah, they established a formula with the first 9 games, right? And then even with the 10th game, honestly, even with Final Fantasy X, when they removed the world map and they kind of changed combat a little bit, I think that, well, kind of a lot of it with the conditional turn-based system, the abstraction of everything that FF10 did still kind of aligned with what Final Fantasy 1 through 9 was, right? Like, it wasn't so jarring. It was kind of an acceptable degree of like, okay, they're changing some things up, right? And because it introduced other things that were really good and really interesting, it kind of got away with it, right? So yeah, I don't think that the intention was even to do like what I'm saying, right? So when I say what I'm saying, I'm very much aware that the developers probably didn't even have that intention themselves, But I think that when you look back on the reality of what they created, it was still there, right? Like it still ended up being the thing. Yeah, Final Fantasy X was still close enough for most of the fan base. FF12 was the pushback, and 13 and 15 were the full revolt from the longtime fan. Yeah, exactly. Final Fantasy X is how you do a reinvention, right? And then I feel like they tried to keep doing that in increasing amounts of departure, and well, fast forward to today. I do think that Final Fantasy X was a reinvention, and then what happened is that Final Fantasy X was massively successful, like the closest success that they've had since 7. And it probably looked like to them that they could just do whatever, you know? Right. But I think what they also didn't understand as well is that 10 was, like Dude McGuy said, close enough, right? Like, yes, you didn't have the world map, but you also had like this world that had interconnected zones. And it was actually very fascinating at the time because you got to explore the world in a different way. And so while Final Fantasy X didn't have a world map, it felt like the pilgrimage itself was the world map, if that makes sense. Like the world map and the world itself were built essentially to scale, if that makes sense. And it didn't really need a world map in the same way. What 10 took away, the world map, it also gave voice acting, smart world building, layout, right. And probably the best combat system that the turn-based games, command-based games, however you want to group them together, had ever put out at that point, right? 10 also gave, like, you know, really insane visuals at the time, like a massive leap in visuals. And so, right, you know, the talk about 10, when we talk about Final Fantasy X, we don't tend to like really talk about the things that it took away, right? Like people don't really talk about the world map, for example, being taken away too much. What the legacy of 10 ends up being is all the stuff that it provided and not the few things that it took away. And also, it's like, oh, they took away ATB. But the conditional turn-based system was something that people liked as much or more than ATB. So it's kind of like, who could complain when most people who enjoyed the last thing enjoyed this thing even more, right? Giant Monkey Butt, thank you so much for the super chat. Off topic, but can FF make a classic-looking Black Mage the main protagonist? Please and thank you. Bring back the old Black Mage look. I'm begging. That would actually be kind of cool. I just imagine in my head like a Black Mage, like looking like Vivi, standing front and center in the of the box art, and like all of these like really tall like regular human proportion characters were standing behind them. That'd be like really funny. Conditional turn-based IMO feels like the closest FF has gotten to Atlas's press turn. Yeah, I agree. It was very similar. And probably the best FF turn-based battle system. I feel like one of the stories you told us reflects the Japanese spirit. There are various discussions about whether a fictional character lives or dies. I think this is a sensitive issue that the West doesn't pay much attention to. I think that attention to detail is a very Japanese cultural thing, and I think it's wonderful. To be honest, at the time, I thought, why go to such lengths? However, when I actually talked about it with the Chocobo's creator, I thought, I'm glad I talked to him. And I realized that in the end, not everyone is following the rules out of stubbornness. As I gained more and more experience, I naturally became able to do these things. However, in the RPGs I create, both people and animals live and die. I feel this is where the Western influence comes in. In wizardry, if you fail to revive your character, they turn to ashes, and if you fail again, they are completely lost. It was a real shock when I experienced my character disappearing, but having that system made me feel a stronger sense of life that brought realism to the world of video games. So I feel like I'm really influenced by that. Actually, when I played Final Fantasy Type 0, I felt like is FF starting to move in a more Western direction? I had that experience, so when you just said all that, it all came together. I didn't do it consciously, I think, like Guillaume. I just expressed the things that influenced me. I had to incorporate things that influenced me and make it my own FF. Yeah, this goes back to like what we were talking about earlier too, where I was saying that like, a lot of our media is like influenced by multiple cultures now, and so you have people who are living in Japan watching like Western media growing up, and then some of that Western media finds its way into their works, and you have people here in the West growing up consuming Japanese media, and a lot of anime and JRPG stuff ends up inside of their games. So things I can say now about the development of Final Fantasy 15. Finally, is there anything you'd like to ask Tabata, Guillaume? I'd like to hear stories you can only tell now. I wonder if there's something. It's related to FF, right? When I was making FF, Square was the kind of company that would really leave it to you to decide to leave it to them. Okay. This reads more like, to me, if it's more like if they entrust it to you, then they really entrust it to you, like all the way. Let me double check that real quick, because that sentence is fucking weirdly worded as hell. I'll use an AI translation for that. Back when I was making Final Fantasy, Square Enix was the kind of company that once they decided to entrust someone with something, they would truly let them take charge. Okay, so I was right. That's what that means. Okay, good deal. So yeah, he says that back when I was making FF, Square Enix was the kind of company that once they decided to entrust someone with something, they would truly let them take charge. For example, FF15, we naturally had a deadline of release it by this year, general deadline, but we were given a lot of freedom when it came to deciding the details of the release date, such as which month it would be released and adjusting the schedule. That's very unusual, isn't it? Of course, I coordinated with various departments within the company, but I was basically still left to my own devices. So I took the development situation into consideration and properly understood the situation of competing titles, and initially decided on a release date of September. However, a month after deciding, I was holding my head in my hands. I messed up. After much deliberation, I began to think maybe I should change the release date after all. Ultimately, we thought it would be better to release it in a better condition than force a release, so we decided to change the release date. So when I look at the new release date, I saw it overlapped with Gravity Days 2, which Iori, who is at the same company, was involved with. Delaying the release date of a major game like FF15 would cause a lot of trouble for a lot of people. It was the biggest mistake. After hearing your story, I realize it's completely different from Western game companies. In the West, marketing teams and producers hold the power, and you can't leave it up to the on-site judgment. I was both director and producer of Final Fantasy 15, so after formulating the sales strategy, I thought now would be the best time to release it. And after consulting with the company, I made the decision. But it was my first time making a game of that scale, so I didn't realize how big an impact a small mistake could have. If we make even the slightest mistake in the way we proceed with development, for example, if we take a wrong turn, the development schedule will be blown away by several months. Then we'll end up thinking, the calculations don't add up. However, it's not easy to have such a meaningful experience. It was certainly a failure, but it was a valuable experience. Expedition 33 is scheduled for release in April, so I assume the game is already complete. What is the current status? We're in the final stages of making adjustments. We're really paying attention to every detail. We're still adjusting the game balance, improving the UI a little, and we intend to keep making improvements until the very end to make the game more comfortable for players. After the game is released, I would love for Mr. Tabata to pick it up and hear his thoughts after playing it. I understand. How long will it take to play through it? The main story is about 30 hours, and if you include the side content, it's about an additional 30 hours. It may take up to 10 years to complete, but would that be okay? I'm just kidding. I'll definitely play it this year. And I think that's the end of the interview. Yep. So that's funny. Oh, man. Gravity Rush mentioned? Yeah, I know. This isn't the best look for Tabata or Square Enix. The FF series isn't managed very well. I mean, is that a secret at this point? I don't think it is. Like we've all kind of like known that. It's not like the most well managed series, so FF fanboy ripping FF apart. You talking about me? Well, then which one is it? Am I a fanboy or do I just rip it apart? That doesn't make any sense. That statement is literally contradictory. Am I a fanboy or am I like a hater? You're like literally implying both in that sentence. Anyway, good interview overall though. Lots of neat nuggets of information. Yeah. As a game dev, I sympathize with how hard it is to predict an end of development date. Dude, it's super hard because you really just don't know. You really just don't. Which is why a lot of games come out so buggy. Because you just really don't know when things are going to be finished. And like, also too, like there's a lot of bugs that like developers know about, but like the deadline is there and you kind of have to decide which bugs you can ship with and which bugs you can't. Right? Like at some point in QA, there are like known bugs, like a lot of known bugs. And you just have to say that, well, these are the bugs that are going to like break the game and are like going to like tank our reviews. So we have to fix those bugs first. And then other bugs are like way more rare and not high priority. So, yeah, we're not worried about it right now. So it sucks, but that's like kind of the nature of game development, really. It's just prioritizing what you're going to fix about the game and like what you're just going to have to say, fuck it, it is what it is. Hater fanboy, yeah. Honestly, sometimes in like the same piece of content, I get called like a hater and a shill. And I'm just like, dog, which one is it? Please pick one. I can't be a hater shill. That doesn't make sense. I would like to think that overall, I hold one of the more balanced views on the series. The way I guess I kind of like meta think about like my channel is like in like the grand scheme of things, you know, there are other like content creators that are like very like, and not just content creators, they're just like like figures on social media. They're like very like pro everything that Square Enix does, pro everything FF does creators. And then there's other like platforms that might be like kind of like, oh, I'm a big hater of everything that Square Enix does. If they're not like turn-based, if it's not like the purest, you know, FF vision like possible, then I hate it. And I always tried to position myself as a guy that just like kind of looked at it objectively, like didn't really have like one way or the other in terms of how I looked at it, like tried to actually look at the situation and not like be too extreme about it on one end, because I feel like when it comes to like discussing like FF in particular, like typically people have like super ass fucking extreme opinions that don't actually necessarily affect or don't necessarily speak to like what the F is actually going on. So I was just kind of like, okay, can I be a dude that's like just reasonable? That's like not like one of these other guys that just has like a very extreme, like either like fanboy take on anything or like hater take. Can I just be like normal in a space where it's difficult to be normal? Where people have almost 40 years worth of like of opinions and such hell. Like, is it possible to just be like not weird about it all? There are definitely pro gaming channels out there who don't just focus on who just don't express their frustrations with certain games because they've cultivated an audience that only wants praise. And then there's the opposite. There's also the opposite, who only complain about bad things to drive engagement. It's kind of exhausting. No, that's so true. That's so true. You kind of have to be either a criticism channel or a fanboy channel nowadays. It's actually becoming increasingly difficult to just be a normal guy who thinks stuff that isn't like you know what I'm saying, like weird in some capacity. So it gets tougher and tougher to do that. Ooh, looks like we got a guy we need to ban here. And so wow, can I not delete their message? Will not let me. Oh, there we go. Delete, ban, and timed out. When you get both hater and chill, you're on the right track. Yeah. I agree. Do you still hold Metaphor really highly in your mind? Not gonna lie, I've soured on it after finishing it and reflecting on it over time. I would still say I really love Metaphor. I would still say it was like one of the best RPG stories in some time for me, or JRPG stories for sure. Yeah, it's hard to pull off an opinion, a my opinion channel now, right? Well, because the two things that drive engagement really on social media is I fucking hate this, or X cultural political ideology is ruining everything, right? And then you need to make videos constantly framing how insert political social ideology is like ruining your childhood and ruining like all your favorite types of games, and how it's like ruining media. And then also the other side of that is that I'm a big fanboy consumer. I consume everything. When the big billionaire company tells me to jump, I ask how high. And a lot of content ends up being in those two camps. You know, a lot of people themselves end up just being in those two camps. And it's just weird because I feel like I'm not either of those types of guys. I can't, you know, I'm not the grifter, and I'm not the I guess also grifter. But I'm not the corporate slave, and I'm not like the like I'm gonna make like a, you know, like a video about how this political thing is ruining everything that's ever happened, and that's why everything is bad now. Yeah. Nah. Prince, are you gonna pick up Lost Soul Aside? Yeah. Oh yeah. I feel like it is like an obligation of mine to pick up Lost Soul Aside, since I've been covering that game since it was first announced. Grifter or Glazer? Yeah. There you go. Raymond's got it. Pick one. Yeah, no, I feel like you get cornered into being like a grifter or a Glazer like nowadays. Like that's that is like the two choices you have. And I just don't want to be either one. But like, you know, there is always that like devil on my shoulder that tells me like, bro, you would be so much more successful if you were a grifter or a glazer. All you have to do is just get on here, bro, and say FF7 ruined. It's because woke. Or I could get on here and I can be like, $80 video games are good, actually. You guys should thank Nintendo for charging you $80. It's either you're outraged about everything or you're a dick rider. And that's the two paths nowadays for like content. You can't just be like a normal ass guy like that just thinks stuff. You have to like, and I get it though, because algorithms want things to be that way because that drives engagement. It drives people to interact and to click, right? And if you have a take on something, then that is what's going to drive views to your channel, right? To all of your social media. And so these algorithms are fucking killing us, and not just in terms of like video games, but like all media, politics, like discussions, like the way we treat each other as human beings. Like algorithms are basically like poisoning our entire existence as human beings. They're kind of causing us to like no longer see each other as people, but see each other and our thoughts, ideas, and lives as content and takes. And not like, oh, this is a human being that I'm like interacting with. Sure, they got on here and they said something fucking stupid. But there's still it's still a person, right? So like, you know, maybe I should, you know, realize that this is a person. Yeah, they're saying something stupid, but they're saying something stupid probably because an algorithm has fed them so much nonsense, and now their brain is programmed to be a bot. And yeah, that's kind of like, yeah. Someone should make a meme channel where they just shamelessly take the consensus opinion on everything, simultaneously glaze and grift. I feel like some of those may already exist. Algorithms slightly feel like a creepy way to influence into behaving like the AI people also want to replace us with. I mean, okay, so think about it like this, right? I think we can all agree that what you see and what your friends and family agree with and think impact the way that we all also see the world and what we agree with and what we think, right? So what if everything that we were seeing was actually influencing, you know, our thoughts, whether consciously or subconsciously, in reality, probably a mix of both, and then also influencing our friends and family. And as a result, it kind of influenced us into kind of basically swaying our opinions and beliefs to other things, right? In other words, what if algorithms could just literally program us? I kind of think that's what's happening. MGS2 codec, yeah. Basically, right? We're being manipulated by math. Night Sky, you were an intuitive type though. Your personality type is INFP. Most people are S sensory instead of intuitive. S types are like yes or no, white or black, but intuitive types are intuitives, huge gray areas. Right. I think when I was younger, I was definitely a lot more like maybe more on that sensory like side of things where I had like a lot more like white or black thinking. But I think as I've gotten older, everything has become a lot more gray and a lot more nuanced, and I just become a lot more I don't have like a take anymore. If that makes sense. I mean, obviously I have takes, I have opinions, but like I'm like less fixed on those opinions necessarily being the truth, right? Like I have things that I like really believe, but I'm not like unconvincible about most things. Unless the things that you're trying to convince me of are just plainly and obviously stupid. Which I do think that in this world, this current day and age, we do get kind of like bamboozled into like a lot of stuff that is plainly and obviously stupid. But yeah. Make a video that says why $80 games are actually good, then release why $80 games suck the next day, but act like a completely different person in each video. That would be amazing. That would be like such a great performance art. Like if you want to do like a good gaming like social experiment channel, I feel like that would be like so cool. Like if you played like a character that had like two different personalities and like one day that character wakes up and he was in glaze mode and then the other day he was in like griff mode and like he basically like went back and forth between the two and like whatever the other guy like would make the take of, he would like take the opposite take. Night Sky Kang. I've thought about bringing, because I only did like 2 videos on that channel, and it's such a shame because that channel had so much potential. But the problem was at the time, it was before YouTube Shorts when I made that. So I was thinking at the time, I was like, oh fuck, it's hard to like make like 5-minute plus videos in this style because I have to do a lot of editing and a lot of joke writing. But now that shorts are a thing, I feel like it'd be great if like Night Sky King videos were just like the comeback as shorts. And maybe that's what I'll do soon. Night Sky King videos will come back and it'll just like literally be like troll videos shorts. And then my channel can get dislikes like crazy and shadow ban. Yeah, exactly. Wokeness is killing gaming. The next day, Last of Us 2 is amazing. Oh, that would be great. You know, it'd be even better. You just be like, you want to really make like a great troll video? You should be like, I refuse to play woke games like Stellar Blade. Oh my god. That would be so funny. I actually, like, I'm not gonna lie, I actually was going to tweet that during like the Stellar Blade like a hype cycle. I was going to tweet like I refuse to play a woke game like Stellar Blade. Because I just wanted to see like what was going to happen. But I never did it. Because I was like, you know what? I deserve peace. But that shit is so fucking funny. That shit is so funny to me. Like if I just did that. Oh man. Like the way people would react, I just think would be so funny. Make a channel where you praise raising prices of games and microtransactions because it makes games high quality. Games should be $140. I feel like there's already some people like glazing like that, to be honest. Some people may not get the joke. It could anger both sides. That's why I didn't do it, because I'm like, oh, it would just make everybody mad. But that's also why too. I think that like, I think social media is not funny. Do you guys remember when social media was funny? Like culture war shit has actually kind of like ruined like social media being funny like at all. Because you can't actually joke anymore. Like, and I don't mean that in like a, oh, everyone will like necessarily get offended. I guess that like people don't know how serious you are with like what you're saying. And like people also don't like really read into like what you're saying as like a joke. And so people like take it like people take a thing like very serious. I think that like older social media was like really funny. Right? Like social media like a decade ago is when we actually had like great memes and stuff. Like Twitter a decade ago, funny. Really funny. We had great shit on Twitter a decade ago. Nowadays, it's like, it's all right. I feel like everyone on social media nowadays walks on eggshells. Like it's not chill anymore. Social media like is very PvP. Like that's like the only way I can describe social media now. Like it's very PvP. And like and this is something like, you know, when we kind of talk about it like what was I going to say? Like I think on like the older days of like forums, you know, before we had like centralized social media so much, that there was like a better sense of community then when there was actually like less people and people just were like talking to each other like realistically and practically, that social media used to actually have a more connected experience to it. And I remember back then, you know, I used to make all kinds of like online friends and it was really cool. But nowadays, and not to say that we don't make online friends now, clearly I do. Many of you have become friends with me. But like, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird because now everything is like a competitive thing to get the most upvotes from people to win, right? Like social media is a competitive thing where we're all trying to like beat the other guy at like having the most correct opinion at something. And I just really hate that. I really hate that. Do you guys know that I've ratioed people and then DM them apologizing for ratioing them? I have. I have. Because my intention 90%, okay, sometimes my intention is to like ratio a motherfucker. Because I'm like, yo, shut the fuck up, dumbass. But like 90% of the time, I actually don't really like ratioing a person. I really just want to have like a conversation. And so sometimes I'll be like, hey man, I didn't mean to like, you know, do all that to you. I just I just disagreed and I wanted to like put out like my kind of, you know, opposing thoughts, but like I don't know. Casual forums versus ranked competitive Twitter, formerly funny. No, really though, really. I had a thought experiment the other day of a social media company that only allowed you to follow 10 people and only message 5 and only post 5 messages / replies per day and only 3 likes per day. Could that kind of social media service be successful in today's environment? Because I feel like that's how people used to use it. No, that wouldn't be successful because, listen, the objective of everything that we consume nowadays, and honestly, not even just social media, but like, you know, food even, is to be like the most hyper addictive thing possible, right? Like everything is designed to be addictive, especially social media algorithms. They're designed to be so that you have an itch in order to use them. And I realized how badly like social media was affecting my brain. There were 2 different instances that happened to me when I realized, okay, I'm in too deep. I'm in too deep. One was okay, so I go to my gym. My gym has like a red light chamber, right? It's really good for like muscle recovery and like skin. So I was like, okay, I want to give like the red light chamber a shot. You just sit in it for 12 hours and it's good for, you know, all the blood circulation, all this different stuff. Sitting in there for 12 minutes. Maybe like 2 or 3 minutes goes by, and I have like goggles on so that the light doesn't like blind me. You can kind of think of it like a reverse tanning bed, because instead of damaging your skin, like the light's like repairing your thing. So like as I'm like kind of standing in there, I'm like, oh my God, I have this itch to check my phone. And as I'm just standing there, because you can't use it inside the chamber because the light is so blinding, and you have like the like tinted glasses on, so you can't even see your phone even if you wanted to look at it. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm just like feeling anxious because I can't look at the phone. Guys, it's only 12 minutes, but I don't have anything to do. There is nothing to look at. And I'm just sitting in this chamber, and all I have to do is just sit with my own thoughts for 12 minutes. And that was like an anxiety inducing thing for me. And that's when I realized, oh shit, okay. This is actually kind of an addiction. This is a problem. And so I had to step back, and like now what I do is that I do limit my social media use throughout the day. I have certain periods of times where I check Twitter. I allow myself to be unrestricted on it past like 8 p.m. So as I get closer to night, once I've done my gym for the day and all the work that I need to do, then I'm allowed to just get on it and doom scroll. But I don't doom scroll during the day, and that's actually really important. Because doom scrolling is basically designed to extract as much dopamine from you as humanly possible. Like that is like literally like what it is designed to do. And the reason is because that's how it becomes habit forming. So, they push like visually stimulating stuff as much to you as humanly possible, because that's how your brain forms the addiction to continue checking it. And the more you're on social media, the more valuable their platforms become. And so they design them to be as addictive as humanly possible. Yeah, like how could I pitch my company to advertisers if people are encouraged to log off after a while? Why would they advertise with me instead of Facebook or Twitter, where people are addicted on 10 plus hours a day? Yeah. That's exactly it. And so they make it to be as addictive as possible. Another situation I had was when I had what I call my Gen Alpha dilemma. And this is when, so I have like an ultra wide monitor, right? So on this half of the monitor, I was playing a game. And on the other half of my monitor, I had a YouTube video going. And then at the same time that I had a YouTube video going and a game going, I was on my phone doom scrolling Twitter. And something just made me pause and go, wait, this is mentally ill. I shouldn't be doing this. What am I doing right now to my brain? I'm not giving my attention to the game or to the YouTube video or to any of the shit that I'm actually looking at, like on this timeline even. I'm like literally split between 3 different things right now. And so unironically, I think brain rot is actually a really good term to describe like what's going on. So to give you guys a better idea, now as I try to abstain from like, or is it abstain? What, abstain? I don't know words. Abstain from social media more. It's actually given me a lot of cool, I almost want to say superpowers, but it's not really superpowers. It's just how your brain normally functions. So the way Dr. K describes it, I love Dr. K's analogy. If you guys aren't familiar with Healthy Gamer GG, you guys should be. I love Dr. K. But Dr. K says, like, when you wake up in the morning, your brain is like a lemon, right? It's like a lemon. And lemon juice is dopamine, right? And so, like, when you squeeze the lemon at first, right? When the lemon's like full and fresh, like it doesn't take much to squeeze it and like a whole bunch of juice squirts out. But as you go out throughout the day, right? You have to squeeze the lemon harder and harder to even get a drop out. And essentially what happens when we doom scroll is that we immediately start juicing our lemon. I know that sounds, but bear with me. We immediately start juicing our lemon. And because of that, we don't have enough lemon juice left over for our more intensive focus task. And so that's kind of the problem with doom scrolling and stuff. Dr. K is mostly cool, just dislike all the spiritual woo stuff he promotes. I actually love that stuff, but again, I've been into Eastern spirituality for like a pretty long time, so I actually know like most of the stuff he's talking about, like when he talks about it. And I've always found it like a very cool foundation. I'm a big like believer in like meditation and things like that. So I'm actually like somewhat inclined to, I don't want to say like agree, but like understand and see like the case that he's trying to ultimately make with it. You know, it's not so much that like, you know, you need to become necessarily like spiritual in like the specific senses that he says, but generally speaking, there is utility to what he's talking about there. Just came to the conclusion that it's BS for me. That's fine. People in the 90s used to say gaming caused brain rot. Yeah, actually, you know, it's funny. I feel like gaming is like actually more engaging than like 90% of all the other stuff you do on a screen. I feel like gaming is kind of the opposite of like using tech for brain rot. It's one of the only things that you can use tech for nowadays that's not brain rot in terms of entertainment. I feel like gaming stimulates the brain a lot more. Like whenever I'm gaming, I feel it's the opposite of brain rot. I don't know about you guys, but like, it actually, like, here's proof that that gaming is not brain rot, right? You're almost never too tired to watch Netflix or to scroll TikTok, right? Like even with like your brain and body on 1% battery life before you go to sleep, you can still scroll, watch one more TikTok, read one more tweet, right? It's so automatic and addictive. But like, you can actually be too tired for gaming. You can be like, I can't really focus on a game right now. And that alone shows that it's not like brain rot, because it implies that it's not just this dopaminergic response that you're getting by default. You actually have to put effort into the game. You have to focus and engage with it. Which is like one thing that one more episode of Netflix doesn't do, is that like you don't have to like do anything or focus or put energy into, you know, to watching that TikTok or Netflix. You can just beam it into your brain. Sometimes I procrastinate to avoid gaming. Yeah, exactly, right? You can also be too physically tired to read books. Yeah, exactly. But it's like really hard to be like too tired to just like doom scroll. Right? Like you can doom scroll. And this is also becoming like a really chronic problem, at least here in Texas. But I imagine like it's a worldwide problem. I don't know about you guys, but like, have you guys encountered people doom scrolling at green lights? Has anyone else like encountered that like increasingly frequent? Because the message used to be don't text and drive, right? That's what they used to tell us growing up. But people aren't texting and driving anymore. People are doom scrolling and driving, and I find that fucking crazy. Oh my God, you mean while driving? Why? I mean, I don't know. People do it though. Like you see it happening. Like, at least for me, like the light will turn green And like you'll notice this phenomenon of cars that just sit there at green lights after the light turns green, and then they won't take off until like a car like until a car honks. Kwai, bro, what's up, man? Houston traffic will make you want to do it. Yeah. No, motherfuckers will like they will sit at the light and they'll fucking doom scroll. They'll doom scroll and like uh you'll have to honk in order to get them to move. I learned more academics increased cognitive skills from gaming than I did in school. I don't blame you. Yeah, I kind of did too, honestly. I feel like gaming has done like a lot for me in terms of my ability to read growing up, because I didn't want to read books, but I did want to read Pokemon. So I like, so you couldn't get me to read, but I would read Pokemon. And it's actually like really funny too, because my parents would be like, "Oh, you need to get off of that game and then you need to go read books." But I'm like, "Bro, I'm reading. I'm like reading on the fucking game." Like this is helping me more than like what you actually want me to go do. And so, yeah, reading, media literacy, hand-eye coordination too. Especially, a lot of people on the phone only notice when they should go when the car next to them passes. They see it in the mirror in peripheral vision because head is down on the phone, but can still see objects moving on their left. Yeah, exactly. And what happens is that they essentially rely on that to know when to stop doom scrolling. But if you think about it, that kind of shows how problematic and fucking insane doom scrolling is because we can't just go on a car ride, right? For like, let's say that the average car ride is between 5 and 30 minutes. We're at the point now where people can't go that long without checking the notifications, without replying, without doing all these things. We're like that plugged in. That's dangerous. That's really scary. Stopping at a green light has happened to me in the past as I was watching my favorite YouTuber NSP. That's different. That doesn't count. That doesn't count. If you're watching an NSP video, the light stays red until you finish. It's different. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm a hypocrite on this. I'm still addicted to social media. I still not as much. I don't compulsively check it as much, but I am conscious of it now, and I don't do it as much. And figuring out ways to do it even less has become like one of my biggest focal points now. Is like, how do I look at this thing less? How do I remove the compulsive habits to keep checking it? That's why I'm a tweet deleter too, because sometimes like you post tweets and all kinds of people are just saying stuff, and like whether you want to deal with it or not, sometimes I'm just like, I said my piece. People know what I think now. I'm gonna just delete the tweet. And so, yeah, I'll delete a tweet in a fucking heartbeat because I don't give a fuck. A lot of people, oh wait, I already read that one. Why do I feel like if people were forced to stop doom scrolling at green lights, they just make it text to speech instead? I feel like they're going to have to after a while. What about listening to podcasts or live streams while doing stuff? Dude, that's totally fine. I don't think that's a bad thing. Ultimate, what's up, man? I don't think like listening to podcasts or live streams is a bad thing, like while doing things, because remember that that's so fundamentally different than doom scrolling. Doom scrolling is you turning your brain essentially off and going into like this infinite like search for like a dopamine hit, right? I'm literally working out while watching you. Okay, awesome. Perfect. Perfect. I listen to podcasts most of the time while driving or doing chores around the house. I think that I think that's great. I don't have anything against that. I don't think there is anything wrong with that. Again, like, because you're engaging with it while you're doing stuff, right? Like while you're doing like menial tasks. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like I think that like where the issue comes in, I don't even think like replying to messages or checking notifications necessarily is even like the a big issue compared to just doom scrolling. Like, and I don't mean just like getting on, checking like what's on Twitter for a little bit and then logging off, right? Like, I mean like when we sit there for like 30 minutes and we just keep scrolling or we just keep checking it compulsively, or like my favorite like millennial Gen Z thing, because we both do it, is like we park a car and instead of getting out of our car, we just sit in our car and doom scroll for like for like a few minutes and just, you know, and then we say we don't have time to do stuff, but then we just spent like 10 minutes sitting in the car after we got home just scrolling for some reason because we're just too tired to get out the car, I guess. Tony Reed, hello, the Nightscape Prince. I'm playing Final Fantasy X at the moment. I'm in the middle of capturing all the fiends from the monster arena. The way you speak about Final Fantasy X is just beautiful. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, letting the algorithm decide how you should spend your time, it's bad. I know, man. I know. And like we're all caught up in it. And like I said, I'm not above it, but I'm trying to be. Trying to be. And I'm trying to encourage other people to do the same. Because I think just like some of the results I've had has been like really good. So I'm much more focused now. Much more focused. Not as focused as I should be, but compared to like where I was coming from, dude, hell yeah. Way more focused now. So okay. So I think we're gonna call it a stream there. I want to thank you all for showing up. We had really good viewership today. You guys are really interested in Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And yeah, so the game is going to release next Wednesday, or next Thursday, I'm sorry. And we'll have a lot to talk about. So I look forward to talking with you guys about that soon. I promise the next stream, by the way, will not be like 4 or 5 weeks out or something like that. I'll be streaming again more regularly soon. All right. Love you guys so much. Take care. And I'll see you next time.